ladies and gentlemen. I call this regular meeting of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Board of Trustees to order at 7:01 p.m. on December 7th, 2017. Please join me at this time in standing as Susan Rogers from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints leads the board's opening prayer and remains standing for the pledges. Ms. Rogers.
Let us pray. Our dear Father in heaven, we are so thankful for this day, for this opportunity to be together, to discuss matters of importance to the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District. We're thankful for these board members that are here tonight. We pray for each one of them. Bless them with wisdom and an understanding of the needs of the students and the faculty and the employees in our district. We're grateful for the many blessings that Thou hast given us. Please help us to remember the ways that we have been blessed and to serve others. These things we pray humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. As a district, we dedicate all our efforts and resources to our goal of high achievement for each student. The board uses this goal to guide all our deliberations, decisions, and actions. You will get to see all deliberations, decisions, and actions of the board in open session, with the exception of some items which may be discussed in a closed session as stipulated in the Texas Government Code, Section 551, commonly known as the Open Meetings Law. These items typically deal with personnel matters, consultation with our attorney, and real estate. For the record, board members present are Nancy Klein, Richard Fleming, Tara Herbachik, myself, John Matthews, Candace Valenzuela, Randy Shackman, and Guillermo Ramos. We do constitute a quorum and may conduct business on behalf of the district. As required by Board Policy BBD Local, let the minutes reflect that all board members have completed or exceeded the number of continuing education hours required for 2017. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to the next agenda item, I would like to remind you that the board encourages comments from citizens of the district and from district personnel. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may do so during agenda item number 4, audience for guests. Please submit your request to do so on one of the forms provided on the table just outside the boardroom door. You may place the completed form in the box provided on the same table or present your completed form to Administrative Assistant Ms. Sharon Scribner over there in the aqua colored shirt. When the board addresses items number 4, agenda item number 4, audience for guests, you will be invited to the podium to speak to the board. And we will now proceed with agenda item number 2, student achievement presentation. Dr. Burns.
Thank you, President Matthews. And welcome. We're glad you're spending this warm December evening with us. Finally feels like December, right? Thank you for being here. I don't think it's a secret that in CFB we only have one goal, one relentless pursuit, and that is high achievement for each student. So we believe every board meeting we start off with making the main thing the first thing. And so the first thing we talk about in every board meeting is student achievement. And tonight we're going to talk about dual language. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Warnock. Dr. Warnock.
Thank you, Dr. Burns. Tonight our presentation is about dual language, twice the learning. We are so proud of our dual language program in CFB and what it offers to our students. We know that when we have multiple languages being learned, that it expands our horizons, it introduces students to the world, and it builds our brain power in ways that monolingual learning doesn't. We are thrilled to offer the program in CFB. It sets us apart. It's part of the reason why we choose public schools and choose CFB. I am pleased to turn the presentation over to Ms. Tracy Smith, our Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. As a young woman, Julia Child moved to France without knowing the language to follow her passion. I found the following that was written about the secret to her success in the culinary world. Too many people, when attempting to learn a new language, see it as a chore or an obstacle, and then wonder why they have so much difficulty attaining their goals. This wasn't the case with Julia Child. She found joy in everything she did, connecting her attempts to learn a language with the life she wished to lead. She was initially adrift in a strange city, frustrated by the local attitudes towards a woman who wished to study traditional gourmet French cooking, then energized by a sudden appreciation for her newfound career. She didn't think of language lessons as homework. Instead, she thought of them as passports to what she sought, whether that simply meant being a citizen of the world, following a specific career goal, or unlocking the secrets of a hidden culture, hidden in part behind a different language. CFB has been a pioneer in developing students' passions for language and learning through its highly sought-after dual language program, bringing out students' superpowers while igniting and fanning their passion for learning. Tonight, we have the real superheroes, teachers, students, and parents who have come to share their stories about their experiences with CFB's premier dual language program. We'll start tonight by introducing two of our practitioners, Esmeralda Leal, bilingual first grade teacher at Thompson Elementary, and Mariana Edgman, fourth grade ESL teacher at Janie Stark Elementary. They'll share their perspectives on the dual language program.
Good evening. My name is Esmeralda Leal, and I am proud to be a part of Thompson Elementary. Many dual language teachers will agree with me when I say that the greatest gift is not to see reading levels move up or when we see a light bulb go off during a new topic in students' minds. Although yes, these moments are rewarding, the greatest gift for a dual language teacher is that moment we see an English language learner helping a Spanish dominant student decoding a word, working in partnership, or even on an assignment. In my current class, it is great to see a Spanish speaker of mine tell a Spanish language learner, "Usa tu cognados." Remember those words that sound the same, like computadora and computer? Students who are Spanish speakers are paired with Spanish language learners. The same pairing concept is used during English instruction. English speakers are paired with an English language learner. Teachers stick to the language of instruction, whether it is English or Spanish. Teachers hold students accountable and expect the respect during the language of instruction, and in return, the love of learning grows. It is a sight to see walking around a bilingual campus where the office and classroom signs are both in Spanish and English. Monolingual students are curious to learn Spanish as well. All of this to say, students are interacting and using what they know in both languages to communicate among themselves, with teachers, and in their day-to-day interactions. Students are picking up the language, mostly orally, from their teachers, peers, and environment. When we begin to talk about bilingualism, we have to remember the main reason why our students are in that classroom and the benefit they have of learning two languages. Parents enjoy to see their child grow academically, but also socially and emotionally. The idea is for students to use both languages in the real world, and it is truly a beauty to see when they do. A native English student who has gone through 3 years of the dual language program recently visited a Spanish-speaking country for a family vacation and was able to guide the family via translation. What a beautiful way to experience another culture firsthand, knowing that this would not have been possible if it were not for the program. It is a pleasure for me to share my love of teaching with the CFB family. Thank you.
My name is Mariana Edgman, and I teach fourth grade at Jenny Stark Elementary. And I'd like to talk a little bit about community. In a two-way dual class, it's going to be a blend of native Spanish speakers and native English speakers. And their day will consist of half a day doing Spanish with language arts and social studies, and the other half they're going to do math and science and an ESL component in English. This is a difficult curriculum, and they end up helping each other immensely. And you see their bonds are very deep, and they develop a lot of empathy for each other. And it really does become a positive community of learners. But it doesn't end there. If you look, when we go to field trips, when we have activities at our school, you will see the parents begin to feel a little more comfortable talking with each other. I see them in the parking lots sometimes, meeting up and discussing things with each other. So a dual language program is not just for the students, it really does help build a strong community.
Thank you. And we have a product of that community here with us tonight. Miss Abigail Steed is currently a 10th grader at R.L. Turner High School. She started with us in the dual language program in elementary school and has continued into high school. You have seen her before because she has come to the board meeting to wow us with her prowess in Spanish. Tonight she's come to update us on her progress.
Buenas noches. Me llamo Abigail Steed y estoy en el 10º grado en la escuela R.L. Turner. Fui aceptada al programa de lenguaje dual en la escuela primaria y completé el programa al final de la escuela intermedia. Good evening, y'all. My name is Abigail Steed, as introduced, and I'm currently a sophomore at R.L. Turner High School. I was accepted into the dual language program in elementary and completed the program my 8th grade year. The classes were challenging, but that was the point. Learning Spanish was not an easy thing. It took a lot of effort and dedication, but the work ethic that I developed by going home and practicing Spanish really prepared me for high school classes. Because of the dual language program, I was able to get all of my foreign language credits out of the way before high school. I passed the Spanish AP exam in middle school, and that will look really good on college applications in a few years. Although taking a foreign language is required in high school, taking the AP class and passing an AP foreign language exam is rare. Also, because of passing this AP exam, I will get college credit for it, and therefore will be able to take a more advanced level class in college. Since I have extra room in my schedule, because of already taking Spanish, I am able to take more classes to advance my education, such as the AP biology class I am currently taking as an elective. Many of my friends are currently taking a foreign language, but they're taking it for granted. They don't seem to understand the effects and benefits of becoming bilingual. People are thoroughly surprised by my ability to speak Spanish and ability to jump into a conversation with them. This program has given me the opportunity to explore new cultures and has given me a new perspective. Moreover, Spanish is going to help me reach my career goal of being an ER nurse. Not only will being bilingual give me a leg up on all the other candidates for the job, but I will also be able to effectively communicate with more patients in order to better their care. In addition, because of having the ability to speak fluently in both English and Spanish, I will get a higher pay grade. Overall, the dual language program has provided multiple opportunities for success and will allow me to surpass others in my educational goals as well as my career goals. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Perez, and I am proud to be the director for bilingual ESL in our district. Our district has always been innovative in its thinking and program planning. In 2006, we started our two-way dual language at one campus, Stark Elementary, with 53 students. The program continued to grow and expand to include Thompson and McCamey Elementary. The program was so successful that parents and students expressed an interest in continuing their quest for biliteracy and bilingualism in middle school. So in 2012, we were able to expand the program to Field Middle School, where our enrollment expanded to 560 students. This year, program enrollment has reached 928 students, as we were able to continue their growth by expanding the program to R.L. Turner High School. This allows us to offer a continuous program for students entering from kindergarten through 12th grade. This is a real bonus for students and parents, as this also enables our students to earn the seal of biliteracy on their high school diploma upon graduation. Tonight, I'm honored to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Romano, who have chosen this program for their entire family.
Good evening. First, I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to us. My husband and I were raised completely different. He was raised as Spanish speaking in his household, but as for me, I was raised English speaking. Once in a while, I did have the Spanglish, but really never spoke Spanish at home until I was able to take Spanish class in high school. We have 3 children: Shyla, who is a kindergartner, David, who is in 1st grade, and Paris, who is in 7th grade. We had our children and heard about the dual language program. We knew we would enroll them in it. It was very important for us that our children know how to speak, read, and write in Spanish. My husband and I had different reasons why it was important for us, but it came down to 3. 1, our family. Being able to communicate with family that are not English speakers. 2nd, our culture. To be able to build a connection to our Hispanic roots, to have love for their heritage. And 3rd, their future. It would open more doors to them and open more for them to be successful. What have we seen from this program? We are so proud of all of them. Our son David is a 1st grader and can read, write, and speak in Spanish. Our daughter Shyla is a kindergartner and has started opening up with our family more because she has confidence to be able to communicate to our family that does not speak English. And finally, our oldest went through the program until this year. She was attending Vivian Field Middle School, but it was a 20-25 minute drive with no traffic. So this year, she is not in the dual program, unfortunately. We do miss her being in that program. But a 20-25 minute drive every day with no traffic, 2 screaming kids, yeah, it's not easy. With this dual program, the only flaw that we see is that it's not in more schools. We would have been able to keep our middle schooler in there if Vivian Field wasn't so far away. But again, we are so grateful and thankful for this program because it has opened our family to a lot more than just being able to communicate with immediate family. So thank you so much for your time.
As you can see, CFB's dual language program allows students in our community a public school education that far exceeds other districts and charter schools. It affords our students in 8th grade the opportunity to take the Spanish AP exam, thus earning high school and college credit before they ever set foot on a college campus. As always, the district strives to meet the needs of parents and students. We are excited today to announce that due to the increase in middle school students who are interested in continuing their Spanish language acquisition, in the school year 2018-19, we will expand our program to Long Middle School to serve the students of Thompson Elementary. We would like to thank the board, the parents, the students, and the staff who have made this all possible. Thank you.
So learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. And that is so very important in CFB, that we help people to see things in new ways and through different perspectives. And so we are bilingual, and we want to know, what's your superpower? If you're interested in the dual language program, we'd love to have you express that interest, and we'll see if we can get you in those programs. We do have one last thing we'd like to share with the audience tonight. We have another wonderful program video that highlights our bilingual and dual language program, and we would like to share that with you tonight.
Being in the dual language program actually has helped me a lot. One of the reasons why I liked it was because my friends helped me in Spanish and I helped them with their English. I have some friends who are from El Salvador, who are from Puerto Rico, and many other places.
The demand for multilingual skills is greater than ever before. With CFB ISD's dual language program, students simultaneously excel in English and Spanish, reading, writing, and speaking.
She was happy with it, so that made me happy. So I was like, okay, this is something that's gonna help you in the long run. It'll help you when you get to college or when you decide to do whatever you want to do as your career. You already have that stepping stone in Spanish, and then you can go to another language and it'll be easier for you.
It's gonna help you a lot in high school and college. I'm taking Japanese, and some of the words remind me of some words that I used in Spanish a lot, and it really helped me because I picked up on the words faster and I learned them faster.
It's the outcome that matters, that you're able to talk to other people. Otras oportunidades para yo fueron cuando yo era en la profesión medical, en la escuela, cuando estabas aprendiendo raíces de latín, palabras medicales.
Spanish is seamlessly integrated into CFB's core classes, making it an everyday cognitive practice. Throughout their school career, students exercise their brain in ways not found in traditional classrooms.
Seeing them speaking Spanish, I felt that it was the right thing. It was amazing because it was offered to them for free.
I can imagine native Spanish speakers learning English. I think it has built my global mindset a lot and my perspective on things going around the world.
Be a part of an unparalleled program that transforms your way of learning and rewards you with a universal lifelong skill. Learn more at cfbduallanguage.com.
We're one of few districts in the state of Texas that offer a dual language program K-12, another reason why we choose public and choose CFB. Dr. Burns, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Board members, any questions, comments? Mr. Shackman.
Dual language programs are awesome for those who are here and those who are watching today or whenever they're watching. We have dual language in addition to Spanish, don't we?
Yes, sir. Well, we have, we offer dual language, which is, we offer both two-way and one-way dual language. So our two-way dual language is a program in which we have both English speakers and Spanish speakers learning English and Spanish together. And then we also have a one-way dual language program for our Spanish speakers who are acquiring English. So we offer both of those programs. And then we also offer, as part of our IB program, exposure in Chinese at Good Elementary.
Any other comments, board members? All right, I have some comments, but I'm going to save them until after we get the other business, which takes us to our next agenda item. It is number 3, recognition of special guests. Dr. Burns.
Thank you, President Matthews. Well, we have some special guests here tonight. You're all special, but we have a few that are just a little bit more special tonight that we're going to recognize. You know, in any production, in any fine arts event, anything, you know there are a lot of people behind the scenes making the magic happen, right? That you don't ever see, but they're the people that make sure that the production and the show goes off well. And those people that are making sure that the little things are done, although they're not the most visible things. And our VIP program is about recognizing those people that make the vision possible, even though they're not always in our vision, right? They're not always in our sight, but they're consistently working behind the scenes to make the show a success. And so tonight we're about celebrating our MVPs, the people that make the vision possible in CFB. As your MVP is introduced, we invite you to stand and celebrate with us. Mr. Matthews, if you'll join me down in the front, we're going to see a whole lot of important MVPs. Mr. Matthews.
Dr. Burns, members of the board, and guests, I'm Rochelle Sharon, Director of Student Nutrition, and tonight I have the distinct privilege to recognize Student Nutrition's MVP, Delia Castro. Delia joined our student nutrition family in the spring of 2005, and for the past 12 years has been making a significant contribution to our district. She is deeply rooted in our community and district, as she has a son who graduated from Newman Smith and went on to UNT to earn a business degree, and has a successful career in Reno, Nevada with Amazon. She has a daughter, Vanessa, who recently graduated from Creekview, that I believe is with us tonight, and is a student at UTA studying nursing, and a fourth grader at Good Elementary School. To be an outstanding school cafeteria manager, one must focus on the small details. Everything from how many ketchup packets were taken during lunch, to making each and every child feel welcome in the cafeteria line. The Student Nutrition Department sets high standards for our district's cafeteria operations, and every month each cafeteria is measured against 8 operational benchmarks. Tonight, I get to tell you about a cafeteria manager who outperformed all others last year. Delia's cafeteria met or exceeded the operational standards every month of last year in the areas of food cost, inventory management, health inspection scores, cash over insureds, external regulatory audit scores, and the general financial health of the operation. In addition to that, we know that her customer service skills are outstanding, as she increased the number of meals served in her cafeteria last year. Occasionally, we move cafeteria managers from one school to another to provide opportunities for professional growth. And when this happens, we often hear from the school staff how much they miss their cafeteria manager to whom they've grown accustomed. But last year, when we announced that Delia would be transferring from Stark to Carrollton, we had a first. A Stark parent called me to share that her son had come home and said that Miss Delia was not going to be his cafeteria manager next year, and he wanted to go to Carrollton too. The parent thought that we should just know how much he loved his cafeteria manager. When you visit her cafeteria, it only takes a few minutes before it is apparent how much Delia enjoys the students that dine with her. Every child is greeted individually with that beautiful smile and warm and nurturing attitude. The students at Carrollton have grown to love Delia as well. Recently, during a visit there, I witnessed a student that brought Miss Delia a chocolate kiss to show his appreciation. Now, you may not know this, but there are not many non-compliant smart snack treats such as chocolate in school cafeterias these days. So a student sharing his treat is a true compliment, and it speaks volumes to the impact that Delia makes on our students. Join me in honoring Delia Castro as the CFB MVP.
Dr. Burns, President Matthews, members of the board, buenas noches. My name is Joe LaPuma, and I am the principal at Creekview High School. It is an honor to be here as we recognize these outstanding CFB staff members who make the vision possible. I am pleased to welcome and introduce our Creekview's MVP, Mrs. Kathy Frade. Kathy loves serving the school and the community as Creekview's receptionist. She has worked in CFB for 20 years, 2 decades, and 19 of those years as a Mustang. For those that have either called Creekview and have spoken to Kathy or stopped in to visit and was greeted by Kathy, know she's great at her job, makes you feel welcome, and sets the standard for what you want and look for in a receptionist. Well, come on, you say, great at her job? That's pretty vague, LaPuma. Imagine, if you will, 135 teachers, 1,950 students, 4,000 plus parents, visitors such as college coaches, district specialists, state representatives like a couple weeks ago, mayors, etc., all coming to visit Creekview through Kathy, either by phone or in person. And then imagine, after your interaction with her, thinking, wow, that lady is a pro. She's efficient, she's kind, she's nice, and she's helpful. That is what she's done just for 20 years. If one looked up eye care customer service, you would see a picture of Mrs. Frade, as she epitomizes what great service to the community means. Kathy's originally from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I like saying that. And I will gladly report that I've never seen her wear a cheesehead hat. She graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee with a degree in social work. Kathy's married to Greg, who unfortunately had a previously scheduled out-of-state trip and couldn't be here tonight. And he's also from Kenosha. When they both graduated from college, Greg applied to work for the Carrollton Police Department, where he enjoyed a 30-year career as a police officer and as a detective. They've resided in Carrollton for over 25 years, which I would say is Wisconsin's loss and Texas's gain. Kathy would say that her greatest joy are their 3 wonderful children who all graduated from Creekview. Her oldest, Simone, graduated from the University of Oklahoma and the College of Journalism and Mass Communication. Simone currently lives and works in Sydney, Australia, and she couldn't be here tonight either. Her daughter, Savannah, is here, and she's with us tonight. She also graduated from Creekview and OU, and she's currently the Special Education Department Chair at Forest Lane Academy in our neighbor school district, Richardson. We're working on that. Their youngest son, Rocky, is enjoying a great start as a freshman at OU with the goal of becoming an FBI agent. Last year, Rocky was also our starting varsity quarterback. A few years ago, Tom Brokaw wrote a book called The Greatest Generation, where he tells stories of American citizen heroes and the common values they share. Values such as duty, honor, economy, courage, service, a love of family and country, and above else, responsibility for oneself. Kathy and her family represent these values in their daily lives. Over the years, Kathy's had many opportunities to pursue other positions, but chooses to stay a Mustang. So as part of the new Greatest Generation, and for help making the vision possible in CFB and at Creekview, I'm honored to work with and present our newest MVP, Mrs. Kathy Frade.
Good evening, Dr. Burns, President Matthews, members of our school board, CFB family, and friends. You may be wondering why it takes two of us to make this speech, but it's because the person we're about to talk about is just that special to each of us. So let me say this. Hope I don't cry. And for those of you that know me, that's rare. But it really is a great pleasure for us to be here tonight to recognize Tina Ewan and to introduce her to each and every one of you. She is the MVP for Educational Services, and this is Miss Debbie Milliken.
And this is Dr. Pat Franklin.
And we are the Directors of Student
Services.
where we take great pride in serving the students, parents, staff, and community of Carrollton-Farmers branch. It is an honor for us to present to you a person who exemplifies service in every sense of the word.
Tina had quite a journey coming to work for us in CFB. She was born in Taiwan and came to the United States when she was 11 years old. And she said it was such an exciting time. Everything was beautiful and new, and her favorite thing to do was to go to the Safeway and look up and down the cereal aisle. And she thought the person who invented cereal was a genius. The very first movie that she saw in English was E.T., and her first complete sentence in English was E.T. call home, phone home, sorry. Tina has lived in the DFW area ever since then, and she's adapted the American culture, language, and traditions. She earned her degree in education from UT Dallas, and she was an ESL teacher at North Garland High School for 8 years, giving back by teaching English to the ESL students who came from many countries. She left her teaching assignment to start a family, and she has a beautiful and brilliant 5-year-old daughter named Zoe who keeps her on her toes. Is Zoe here? Yes? Okay.
Tina called her parents in Taiwan a few days ago to let them know about the MVP award she was receiving tonight. And again, when I talk about crying, this is the anniversary of the day I lost my mom, so I'm really emotional this day, but it was just that important for me to be here for Tina. So that's why I'm here tonight. I just wanted to throw that in as an aside. But we are very happy that her family will be able to view this presentation on our CFB website, and they can hardly wait to get that opportunity. Her parents have always told her and taught her, do what others cannot do, but always give it more than what is required. And Tina truly exemplifies that in every sense of the word.
Tina started in CFB as a substitute teacher. And when our office had a staff member out on leave, we asked Tina if she would like to try a different type of sub experience, and she did agree. She actually did 2 long-term sub assignments in our office, and then a permanent position came open, and we knew that Tina was the perfect person for our team. One time, Dr. Burns came into our office, and we heard Tina say, "Hello, Dr. Burns," and he answered, "Why, hello, Tina. Are you working here now?" We were amazed that even Dr. Burns knows Tina.
One of Tina's many roles in student services as our secretary is to process information regarding the students who have been identified under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act. She has told us often that this has given her a brand new outlook on life. She sees that these people have many needs, and she works with them tirelessly on a daily basis. She feels that this experience has humbled her and given her the opportunity to serve not only the staff on our campuses, but these families as well.
We asked people in educational services how they would describe Tina. One said, "Working with Tina has been a real pleasure because she goes beyond in her kindness and willingness to help others." Another said, "She is a great asset to the Student Services Department." And another said, "She is quiet, a team player, very reliable, and a hard worker."
She is sweet, friendly, positive, polite, and upbeat. She greets everybody with a smile, just like the one you see right now. Everyone she talks to on the phone is her very best friend, and she never hangs up until their needs have been met or they are happy. She is a person of integrity. We all know the quote, "Integrity is doing the right thing even if nobody is watching," and that definitely describes Tina. There seems to be a common thread running through all the things that we were told about Tina, and we believe that one thing can be summed up in one word, and that word is awesome. Tina, you are truly an awesome person.
Tina, you're an excellent example of a caring and committed employee. For that and numerous other unmentioned contributions, we can truly say that we are thankful
and blessed
to
recognize you as one of our
newest
MVP. You see how we work together?
Good evening, Dr. Burns, President Matthews, members of the board. My name is Brooke Hall, and it is my privilege to serve as the principal at R.L. Turner High School. It is my pleasure tonight to honor our newest MVP, an incredible lady who makes the vision possible at Turner High School each day, Mrs. Sandy Burkhart. Mrs. Burkhart is a Turner Lion through and through. She graduated from Turner High School and has worked at her alma mater for the past 28 years. Sandy began her career at Turner when Carla McGee hired her to be a special education classroom aide. She then served as an assistant principal secretary for a few years before being sent to the principal's office. For the past 15 years, she has served as the principal secretary for 4 different principals. Although her official job description is principal secretary, unofficially, she's the meal planner, the travel agent, the therapist, the work order creator, the supply finder, the giver of the best hugs, the surrogate mother to all Turner staff, and the surrogate grandma to their kids. And there is not much that Mrs. Burkhart won't do for her Turner family. Sandy's colleagues love her as much as she loves them. Athletic trainer Jonathan Wilk says, "Sandy is the glue that holds Turner together. She is the person who will do for anyone who is in need. She likes being behind the scenes and doesn't like the recognition other than a thanks." Turner teacher Drew Mayer says, "She is never too busy to ask how you are doing. She's never too busy to do anything for you, and she's happy to do it. Her bank of procedural information about how this building operates is out of this world. Most importantly, she epitomizes unconditional love." And finally, longtime office mate and receptionist Kathy Burton, who's here tonight, says, "Do you need a hug? Go to Sandy. Do you need someone to care about you and go out of her way to help you? Go to Sandy. Do you need someone here early in the morning? And then do you need someone to work late that same evening? Go to Sandy. Do you need someone you can count on day after day? Go to Sandy." If you ask Sandy, she'll tell you she's just doing what she loves to do each day, taking care of the students and staff of the R.L. Turner family. If you ask her Turner family, they'll tell you this family doesn't work without her. And so it is with great pleasure that I honor Mrs. Sandy Burkhart as an R.L. Turner treasure who makes the vision possible every day.
Mr. Matthews, Dr. Burns, members of the board. I'm Melvin Beckham, supervisor of the district's plant operations department, and I'm here on behalf of the facility service department to honor Ms. Hen Tu as our MVP. I also have Don Sum, one of our team members with me. He will be assisting me with our presentation. Hen Tu has worked for the CFB for 35 years, the last 15 years at R.L. Turner High School. She has worked at Perry Middle School, at Newman Smith High School, at Central Elementary, and at Creekview High School prior to moving to Turner. Most of us would not know it, but for those 35 years, while most of us are sleeping, Ms. Tu is on the evening shift every night until almost midnight, taking care of our buildings. She is an exemplary employee, representing our department with professionalism and dedication to make sure and provide a safe and healthy environment and do her part to meet the district goals of high achievement for each student.
យើងមានវត្តមានខ្លាំងណាស់នៅយប់នេះដែលបានជួបនៅអ្នកស្រី Tu គាត់ធ្វើការនៅក្នុងសាលារៀន35ឆ្នាំហើយក្នុង15ឆ្នាំនៅ R.L. Turner ហើយ15ឆ្នាំទៀតដែលគាត់ធ្វើនៅ David Perry, Newman Smith, Central and Creekview ថ្ងៃនេះយើងមានកិត្តិយសខ្លាំងណាស់ដែលបានជើញគាត់មកហើយនឹងកូនស្រីគាត់
Hen Tu was born in Tokyo, Cambodia, before arriving in the United States in 1980. She was one of 7 children and moved to the United States to provide a better life for her family. Shortly after arriving here, she moved to Carrollton, where she met and married Sarat's son. Together, they had 3 super children, Sophia, Linda, and Richard. All 3 graduated from CFB before going off to college.
អ្នកស្រី Tu គាត់មករស់នៅស្រុកអាមេរិកនេះមកពីស្រុកតាកែវនៅស្រុកខ្មែរហើយគាត់មកនៅដល់ស្រុកនេះពីឆ្នាំ1980គាត់មានកូនស្រី2នាក់ឈ្មោះ Sophia Linda ហើយនិងកូនប្រុសម្នាក់ឈ្មោះ Richard ហើយកូនស្រីគាត់ទាំងពីរទាំងកូនស្រីនិងកូនប្រុសទាំង3នាក់ក៏បានរៀនចប់នៅនឹង Carrollton នេះដែរ
Her supervisors have always been able to count on Ms. Tu and commented that she is loyal and committed. In her 35 years, she had 20 years of perfect attendance. Not very many people can claim that one.
កម្រមានណាស់ព្រោះគាត់ធ្វើការក្នុង35ឆ្នាំនេះគ្រាន់តែធ្វើមិនដែលឈប់សោះ20ឆ្នាំគាត់បានរង្វាន់ហើយនឹងបានសញ្ញាបត្របន្តបន្ទាប់
Mr. Ivan Cedillo, assistant principal at Turner, has said Ms. Tu has always done a tremendous job for us. I often receive feedback from teachers commenting about the attention to detail that is performed in their classrooms. They have commented that she is very friendly and she is always wanting to make sure and get the job done.
អនុប្រធានចាងវាងនៅសាលា RL Turner គាត់តែងតែសរសើរហើយនឹងប្រាប់អ្នកស្រីទូថាគាត់ធ្វើការល្អណាស់ហើយនៅពេលដែលគាត់មកធ្វើការរាល់ថ្ងៃគាត់ច្រើនតែសួរលោកគ្រូហើយនឹងអ្នកដែលធ្វើការនៅនឹងតើគាត់ធ្វើការមានខុសចម្លោះស្អីខ្លះគាត់ធ្វើការល្អបំផុត
So, as you can see, we're extremely proud to honor a team member that represents everything that we could ask for. A team member that makes the vision possible.
ក្រសួងខាងយើងអ្នកខាងសម្អាតមានមោទនភាពហើយនឹងមានសមត្ថភាពខ្លាំងណាស់ដែលបានអ្នកដែលធ្វើការដូចជាអ្នកស្រីធូចូលរួមក្នុងក្រុមជាមួយយើង
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Hen Tu.
That concludes our recognition of our special guests, our MVPs. Now we do want to make some announcements because we do have a couple of weeks of school left before the winter break. Remember, you'll like the calendar after. Okay, just be patient. We're getting there to the end of the semester. But we do have a lot of things happening in the district we want to share with you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Angela Shelley Brown, our Chief of Communications.
Dr. Burns and members of the board, I would like to give you an update of the events and activities happening around CFB. I want to remind our families of the holiday school schedule. December 21st and 22nd are early release days for most campuses. District offices are closed December 25th through January the 5th. January the 8th is a teacher workday, and students return January the 9th. Remember, Early College High School has a different schedule, so check the district's website for calendar information. The annual Martin Luther King Parade is scheduled for Saturday, January the 13th, beginning at 10 a.m. in Carrollton. Many CFB campuses will be in the parade. The parade begins behind the Carrollton City Hall and ends at Polk Middle School. The MetroCrest Chamber of Commerce is going to hold the State of Education breakfast at Brookhaven College on Tuesday, January the 23rd. Dr. Burns will be speaking with along with Dr. Chesney. It begins at 7:30 a.m. You can sign up at the MetroCrest Chamber of Commerce website. On Saturday, January 27th, you're invited to attend the district's Elementary Olympiad at R.L. Turner High School. Visit the district's website for more information about the Great Olympiad. The next board work study meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February the 15th at 6 p.m. at Field Middle School. R.L. Turner Newman Smith High Schools will be presenting their musicals. R.L. Turner is performing The Little Mermaid, January 18th, 19th, and 20th at 7 p.m. Newman Smith is performing Little Shop of Horrors on January 26th and 27th at 7 p.m. Ticket information is available on the district's website. I would now like to invite Sally Derrick, Council PTA First Vice President, to share about our local PTA.
Hello, my name is Sally Derrick, and I serve as the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Council PTA First VP of Leadership Development. I'm here tonight to provide you a brief update on the efforts of the Council PTA and our local PTA's efforts to support our goal of high achievement for each student. Local PTAs have hosted book fairs, pep rallies, and other family engagement nights over the past month. These events focus on increasing parent and community involvement in our schools, which we consider a priority. Many of our local PTAs organize spirit nights at local restaurants. This is an easy way to engage with other CFB families over dinner, as well as a great opportunity to help financially support a PTA. And you don't have to cook. I would urge everyone to connect with a campus PTA on Facebook as a way to receive notifications of such opportunities. Our last Council PTA meeting was held on November 8th with a program on communication tools for PTAs. All 36 of our PTAs are in active status with Texas PTA, which means they have a minimum of 20 members and have registered their officers with Texas PTA. 10 of our 36 PTAs have more than last year's members as of October 31st, and they were awarded the Fall Membership Increase Award. Council PTA is partnering with the district parent education team and presenting social media and internet safety on January 31st at 6:30 p.m. in the Texas room of the Educational Services Building. Our local campuses were busy in the month of November accepting and then judging their local Reflections entries. Reflections is a national PTA art program with 6 categories of dance choreography, film production, literature, music composition, photography, and visual arts. There are 4 age groups, and we had 185 entries advanced to Council PTA for judging this past Saturday. Council PTA awards will be handed out at our next meeting on January 24th at 7 p.m. at Good Elementary. I hope everyone will come and celebrate our CFB artists with us. A special thank you to the 17 volunteer judges from the community that helped us on Saturday. The program would not be possible without our local campus PTA volunteers and those that assisted with judging. Our hashtag CFB Matters to Me has been seen across all social media platforms. November was a month to post what we are thankful for in CFB using the hashtag. In December, we are asking for people to post what the gift of education has provided or will provide to your student and family, preferably with a picture, because we like seeing all of our CFB students and families. I speak for the entire CFB Council PTA board when I say that your gift to us is a district that provides so much support for our volunteers so that we too are able to contribute to high achievement for each student. We wish the community a very happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing everyone on January 24th at the Reflections Award ceremony. Thank you.
Dr. Burns, that concludes our report.
Mr. Matthews, member of the board, that concludes our recognition and announcements for this evening.
Okay, it's my turn to make some comments, and I love doing this. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Smith and her group, and Olivia, Esmeralda, and Mariana. Appreciate the work that y'all are doing. Abigail, I got to talk to you. I'm always impressed when we have outstanding students get up there, and I tried very hard to understand what you were saying in Spanish. I took 2 years of Spanish myself, and the phrase that I remember the most from my days in Spanish was "Lo siento, pero Luisa tiene catarro," which in English means "I'm sorry, but Luisa has a cold. I never knew who Louisa was, never met her. But I knew she had a cold. All right? And that statement stuck with me all my whole life. I do know Tara, and I can tell you right now that tonight, Tara tiene catarro. Anyway, good luck to you, darling. If I'm ever in the ER, I want you to be there with me. Mr. and Ms. Romano, your family is lovely, and I appreciate everything y'all are doing, and stay with us. And now to you five ladies up here. I'm going to start with Delia and Hen. I've worked in 3 schools in this district in my long career here. The first week that I'm ever at whenever I started those schools, the first week, the people I wanted to meet most in the building were the cafeteria ladies and the custodians. I'm serious. And because the cafeteria ladies and the custodians pretty much run the school. And then there's some other people who also help with that. But they, in fact, over the years, when I first started in the district, I weighed like 140 until I met a lot of good cafeteria ladies who wanted to fatten me up. And, you know, so it's your fault, but that's okay. And our buildings, the cleaner our buildings are, the better our kids are going to like going to them and learning. So that's, and of course I know Melvin and Dom, I've gone way back with both of them too. And student services, you know, you can't, it's, you know, student educational services. You serve all the students and all the parents in this district. That's a pretty big job. And y'all do a marvelous job, and we appreciate all your efforts. And last but certainly not least, I have known and worked with, personally, Sandy Burkhart and Kathy Frey. I've known Sandy for 26 years. I've known Kathy for 20 years. I love both of these ladies. There are probably not 2 finer ladies working in this district. If I ever decide to get back in the business and go open up a school, I'm going to steal them from wherever they are, and they're going to come work with me again. Thank you, girls. You know how much I care about you. So, that's that. This concludes our record. We've already done that. I would like to remind you that board encourages comments from the citizens of the, hold on just a second. Encourages comments from the district and from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may do so during agenda item number 4, audience for guests. Please submit your request provided on the table outside, or you can give it to Sharon Scrivener right over there. When the board addresses agenda item number 4, audience for guests, you will be invited to the podium to speak to the board. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to cordially invite every one of you to stay for the remainder of the board meeting, which may last till tomorrow, but it may not. But you're certainly welcome to hang around here. We have some exciting things coming up. But just in case you have to go, we're going to have a 10-minute recess, and we'll be back at 8:15, and we are recessed for 10 minutes. If you have to go, I guess you just have to go. Thank you. 16. The next item on the agenda is our audience for guests. Before we begin, I want to remind you once again that audience for guests procedures were handed out. Anyone who wants to speak during audience for guests must sign in and list the topic they want to discuss. Each speaker will be allowed to speak once during the audience for guests. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board, and the audience for guests portion of the meeting will be no more than 30 minutes total, as dictated by board policy BED local. If during that time the board is not able to hear from everyone who has signed up, those who do not have an opportunity to speak will be invited to sign up to speak during the audience for guests at the board's next regularly scheduled meeting in January. Because the board wants to hear from as many of you as possible while also keeping the meeting running efficiently, groups of more than 5 people who want to present a particular viewpoint on a topic should appoint one person to speak on behalf of their group. Again, that speaker's presentation will be limited to 3 minutes. If you speak during audience for guests, either individually or on behalf of a group, please remember that the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda for this meeting. And last, we ask that you do not discuss students who are not your own kiddos. Specific complaints should be addressed through the district's grievance process, not in audience for guests. District policy DGBA has been established for addressing employee complaints. Policy FNG is the avenue for filing parent complaints, and policy GF addresses community member complaints. Grievance forms can be obtained at any campus administration office or in the central administration offices. Our timekeeper, Ms. Klein, please start the 30 minutes now. Please also time each speaker for 3 minutes. Speakers, the timekeeper will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Ms. Scribner, are there any audience for guests this evening? Okay. Our first speaker, Susan Rogers.
Hello again. My name is Susan Rogers, and I say my address, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I live at 2724 Oak Trail, Carrollton, 75007. Dr. Burns, President Matthews, members of the CFB ISD School Board. Earlier this year, the Texas Education Agency engaged a startup specialized data mining company called SpedX to analyze data from special education students' individualized education plans. This agreement was made without public input and without considering multiple bids for this service. As a parent of a former student and a current student receiving special education services, I applaud the TEA's desire to research the best practices resulting in best outcomes for our students receiving special education services. I am concerned, however, that this arrangement was made so quickly, with an unproven company formed only last year, and without the input of parents, faculty, and self-advocates. It's my understanding that the CFB ISD board has had initial conversations with TEA and SpedX about this program. I would join my voice with the Texas Council of Administrators of Special Education and Disability Rights Texas in asking you to delay your decision on whether or not to share our students' IEPs with SpedX until more is known about how confidential student information will be protected and how this information will be used and shared. The board may also want to consider whether a for-profit company is the best option to conduct this type of research and data analysis, or if this would be better handled through one of our great Texas universities. Thank you for all you do to facilitate high achievement for each student, including those receiving special education services. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Emily Derrick.
Hi, my name is Emily Derrick, and I'm in the 8th grade at Vivian Field Middle School. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the dual language program, which I have been in for almost 9 years. I started when I was in kindergarten, and I've had the time of my life. What is super neat about this program is first that you learn Spanish, but also you have a different teacher for every year and learn Spanish according to where they're from. For example, I've had a few teachers who are from Colombia and their culture, and also from Puerto Rico. You learn to say words differently, and you get to learn more about from where they're from. So this past summer, I had the opportunity to travel to Peru for 6 weeks. Since I was in South America, almost no one spoke English, so I got to use my skills, my Spanish skills that I learned here in CFB to talk to some pretty amazing people. While I was there, I created some amazing bonds. Just this past week, I called one of my friends from there and sang happy birthday to her in Spanish. Another wonderful experience that I had when I was there is that I got to help teach some of the locals Spanish. So I created lists with words in English and Spanish to help them learn. So I just wanted to thank CFB ISD for having this amazing program and helping me become more successful and independent. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that was all of our audience for guests for this evening. As stated earlier, the board may not discuss or act on any issues that are not posted on our agenda for tonight's meeting. However, the board may refer the comments to the administration for further review or research. We will now proceed to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 5, consent agenda. The consent agenda is a mechanism that the board uses to approve a number of routine items together with a single vote. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the public notice for this meeting includes the list of all consent agenda items, and the board has been provided ample information about these items in advance. Prior to any action taken on the consent agenda, board members may request withdrawal of individual items for clarification or discussion. Board members, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda at this time?
Mr. Matthews, I have one. And I apologize, I should have brought it up in the pre-meetings. I'm going to abstain from consent agenda 5I, so I'd like to get that one pulled.
Any other?
5C and
Yeah.
that's it.
5C?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Matthews,
Yes.
administration would like to submit an amendment to item D that you all have a copy to, whereby we have amended a donation
Did you
description.
say D or D?
D?
D is in dog, okay.
Yes, sir.
If there are no other items to be removed, do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda as amended? Ms. Klein?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as amended.
Have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second? Have a second from Ms. Robachick. All those in favor, any discussion about that? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. We will now address the items pulled from consent. Mr. Ramos, on 5A, you are abstaining? 5I. I meant 5I.
Mr. Matthews?
Yes.
Since he's simply abstaining, then I would make a motion that we approve consent agenda item 5I.
Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Chapman to go ahead and approve 5I, since it's just simply a 5I. I don't see, keep saying A, I don't know. Do I have a second? Got a second from Ms. Valenzuela. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, that vote's unanimous. Mr. Fleming?
5C, consider approval of purchase of ERG analytic subscription. How long have we been using ERG? Is it 7 years or? 9 years. 9 years. Looks like the prices kind of went up significantly since then. Is there anything new that they're providing for us? Any new services or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Warnock speak to it. We discussed it a little bit earlier, and there is an additional part that they provided, separate from what we started with 9 years ago, that has some value to us, although we are looking at some other things, but I'll let Dr. Warnock kind of fill you in.
Sure.
So the ERG, it's comprised of two components. The first is the benchmark analyst tool, and that's what we originally started with in the district and have used that service for 9 years. It gives us comparison data to to all of the districts, and that is one fraction of the cost. The second, the larger component of the cost, is a planning analyst that allows us to look at data very campus-specific. It allows us to look at individual students, to look at their growth, and our team is currently working on moving the same capabilities into another data software tool that we use, that we would like to make sure that that's up and running, and then we would plan to discontinue that component for 2018-19, but would like to procure the service through this next year while we tweak our internal system that we're working on developing.
If I remember correctly, I think that subscription, the benchmark was like, I think 25,000, I think the first year that we actually chose ERG, I believe.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the longitudinal price change, so it's 32,540 for the benchmark analyst piece. The larger cost is in the planning analyst because it's updated with our data regularly.
Yeah, and Mr. Fleming, it was a little less than that originally, but as all things, it has some increase in cost. But over time, that particular piece has been the core of our performance pay scorecard.
Sure.
And as Dr. Warnock explained, the other provided some good analytics, so until we can do that on our own, we're recommending that we continue.
Absolutely. Board members, I'd like to make a recommendation that, make a motion, excuse me, to.
Ms. Valenzuela.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I actually just had one question.
Sure, go ahead.
So, does the new A through F system affect the data for ERG at all?
The ERG will give us insight into the A through F because it's set up as a similar model. We're looking at a scatter plot, the line of best fit, and how the data is collected there. I think we're going to be maybe ahead of the game in understanding how that the school progress measure is going to be calculated, because we are really familiar with the tool, and it looks like it's the models that we've seen from TEA look very similar to the tools in ERG. It won't necessarily have an impact on the A through F rating, but it will help us have better understanding and insight into where we are, and to help us move forward the data tools.
My only concern was with the rating and with some of the changes, if there was going to be some sort of possibility for an additional cost incurred if they had to change the system at all, or if this is just going to be the same.
No, this is the cost that we would be contracted for this next year. So.
I got one more question. Are there any other companies out there that do what ERG does for us, or for all Texas schools?
There's probably some other data out there. There's not one that we found that does the regression analysis, control for poverty, that we believe is the one factor that impacts achievement the way they do it, and consistently over time provided us this benchmark of how we're doing compared to our peers. So we haven't found one comparable. There may be, but not exactly the way they do it.
Do you know what percentage of school districts are actually using ERG?
I don't know the percentage, but there's a large number. We weren't the first to go on board with them. Others were using it before us, but they do have quite a client base. They also have gone before the commissioner many times. There has been interest. It hasn't been officially adopted, but there are parts of the ERG that the state has even tweaked to their own system to match a little bit that weighting and value over time. So they're pretty smart guys down there, and we believe they've provided a really level field to look at how you're doing compared to everyone else when you don't look like everybody else necessarily.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, you have a motion?
I think so.
Okay.
Board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve 5C, consider approval purchase of ERG analytics subscription.
Have a motion from Mr. Fleming. Have a second from Mr. Shackman. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Nope. That vote is unanimous.
Any discussion?
We have one more.
You have D.
5D.
Yes, we pulled this one, so.
Yep,
we didn't
go
vote
ahead.
on that one. Okay. Ms. Tillman, you want to brief the board on this?
Each of you have received an amended copy of item D, the second page, the actual report. We just had to make one change where we modified the purpose of the McCoy Elementary donation. That was for student field trips for 17-18 in the amount of $7,100. And we just ask that you approve the amended report as presented.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Klein? Okay, I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Ramos. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. And we got next, aye. We don't need to vote. Do we need to vote on that? That's on the abstention.
You
We already did all
You already
that, so
approved
we're
aye.
done.
Yep,
Okay.
you already approved aye.
All righty. Our next agenda item is number 6. Excuse me. Report on continuing education credit earned by members of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees. Texas Education Code, Section 11.159B, requires a report of board members' continuing education credit be made at the last regular meeting of the year. Documentation to fulfill that requirement has been provided in the board book document for this meeting and was announced as part of the call to order tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda item is number 7. Dr. Burns, I understand there's a report you and the staff wish to make before the board takes any action on this item.
Yes, President Matthews, members of the board, as you recall from our work study, we gave you some insight and some kind of information regarding District of Innovation and that being an option for school boards to consider. And there's some formality and some procedures to go with that for us to officially move forward. So as we said, we bring that forward for you tonight. And so I'm going to let Dr. Warnock tell you a little bit more about it and for the audience, and then also we'll proceed with getting the board's input.
All right, thank you, Dr. Burns. The District of Innovation came into being in the 2015 legislative session under House Bill 1842. And since the passage of HB 1842, 652 districts in Texas have pursued the status of a District of Innovation. The state legislature passed District of Innovation as an attempt to free school districts from some of the regulations that are part of the Texas Education Code in an attempt to allow the same flexibilities for school districts that charter schools enjoy. There was some talk that in 2017 that District of Innovation would be removed by legislative action, but that didn't happen. And so we were waiting to see what happened in the 17 session before we decided to proceed and are bringing that forward tonight after discussion with our District Improvement Council and after presenting that at our board work study at the board's interest. As part of a District of Innovation, we, as a district, would write a plan that would exempt the district from certain requirements, and those requirements that we can consider making exemptions from relate to site-based decision-making. We could alter the uniform school start date, moving that from the 4th Monday in August to another date, and we've seen many districts take advantage of that in the as part of the possibilities there. We can adjust the minimum minutes of instruction, also knowing that we wouldn't receive funding if we don't have the minimum minutes of instruction. We can look at changing the class size ratio, the 22-to-1 rule. We can make alterations to the attendance rules, student discipline provisions. We can also look at modifications to teacher certification, teacher contracts, benefits, or the appraisal system. Things that we cannot do under pursuing an innovation status is alter the governance structure of the district, alter the power, duties, responsibilities of the board superintendent and principals. We must continue to report through PEIMS, continue criminal history checks and misconduct reporting. We would continue bilingual education, pre-K, special education, the curriculum and graduation requirements. accountability and assessments, financial accountability, open meetings, public records and purchasing, nepotism, and any other state and federal laws outside of the education code. So the things that we can do, we brought to our District Improvement Council, and we saw an interest really in looking at the possibilities of changing our school start date expressed by members of our District Improvement Council. We have a short fall semester at this time, and some flexibility in the calendar would allow us to have more instruction prior to state testing, to equalize semesters, and to move the end of school prior to Memorial Day. And we also saw some interest from our District Improvement Council in looking at some specific teacher certification requirements, particularly for innovative programs that may be difficult to find certification for, particularly in CTE or specialized world languages was another interest area that the DIC discussed. So you can see our timeline is very aggressive if we wish to pursue a District of Innovation status for implementation in the 2018-19 school year. We began discussion of the innovation plan in November with the DIC, and also brought the information to the board in a work study session in November. Should the board choose to adopt the resolution to pursue District of Innovation tonight following this report, then that would trigger a series of several events. Immediately following adoption of the resolution, we would open up for any public comment on District of Innovation. And at this point in time, the board choosing to adopt the resolution does not require the board to adopt the innovation plan down the road. It just sets in motion the process to consider pursuit. The board then, following the public comment time, would appoint a committee. We have recommended a committee to the board, and then would also have time and space for the board to add or remove members from the committee that we have provided for you in your materials. That committee would tentatively meet on December the 11th, 2017, and to review a plan which we've worked in draft and based on feedback from the DIC, and would determine the need for any additional meetings. The DIC would then meet to consider the plans. We would have two committees, one that would be established to draft and revise it, and then the DIC would have to vote with a majority to approve the innovation plan. Once it's approved, we would post the innovation plan on the district website. It has to be posted for 30 days prior to the board's consideration of the plan. And then at the January meeting, we would bring a report to you about the contents of the plan, bring you the innovation plan, and then return in February to ask the board to consider approving the plan. And that requires a supermajority of the Board of Trustees in order to approve the plan. Once it's approved, the plan stays in place for the length of the term that is determined by the committee for up to 5 years. Any amendments or changes to the plan must go back through the same process. So if that was to be modified, we would establish a committee, and we would take that plan to the DIC and bring it back to the Board of Trustees were there to be any changes after the initial plan. So that concludes our report. Just some information for you prior to determining if you wish to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Board members, this agenda item is posted for action. Is there a motion? Ms. Klein.
I would make a motion to consider approval of the resolution to initiate the process of designation as a District of Innovation.
I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Ramos. Is there any discussion? Ms. Klein?
I have a question. How does this work with our calendar that we're reviewing for that next year also?
Thank you, Ms. Klein. The District Improvement Council will look at several models of calendars. Ms. Shelley Brown's office has been working on that. We have 4 models in draft right now, some that take into account adoption of innovation status, and some that do not. We would seek feedback from the District Improvement Council and then from the schools. In February, when we would bring the board the innovation plan, we would have a subsequent item to adopt the school calendar, and we would have options for you to consider then. One that is the preference of the community should the board choose to be a district of innovation, and then one that would be the preference of the community should the board choose not to pursue district of innovation.
Mr. Butcher?
And I just want to confirm on that list of things that you can do and you can't do, that plan will specifically outline our focus or what's determined to be the focus, and then after that fact, you can't touch those other things that you could do if they're not in your plan.
That is correct. And I want to be very clear that the flexibility that charter schools enjoy are flexibilities like not allowing a duty-free lunch, not requiring, conference period, able to terminate teachers without, contract and property rights. Those are all pieces of the flexibility that charters enjoy that encourage their staffs to come and join public schools. We see a lot of charter staff members that leave because they don't have the protections that public school teachers have and that public school teachers deserve. And none of those are flexibilities that we have any interest in pursuing. We want to protect the rights of our teachers. We want to look for the things that would bring benefit to our students and to our teachers to have additional time and some flexibility. But all of those things would be explicitly provided for in the plan, and we would not be able to deviate from that for 5 years or unless we went back through the process.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Klein? Mr. Shackman?
I'm just curious what kind of feedback since our work study has staff received about this discussion item?
We've had very positive feedback from our teachers that were on the District Improvement Council. We have, several of them are here tonight. Very positive feedback, particularly about pursuit of altering our calendar. It would bring us in line. Every district that touches our borders has pursued innovation status with the plan to modify their start date. So when we think about what that does, allowing more time for students to learn prior to that state testing, prior to AP testing, bringing our calendar in line with some of our neighboring districts for our staff members who have children in other districts. All of that, we have received very positive feedback from our staff.
Mr. Shackman?
2 questions. Are there any concerns with calendar date, school dates changes, and contracts that are in place? And so we may need to bring some information on that. We don't necessarily need it answered tonight, but that may be something that we need to make sure we don't have any issues with. I don't think we would, but the other one is with the 5-year implementation. Are you required to do 5 years, or could we opt to do a shorter period of time so we could review? And if we did the 5 years, suppose, I don't know why we would find that it didn't work, but suppose we found that it didn't work. I realize you can amend, but can you stop without 5 years?
So the first question about the contract terms, we have an end date of our contract terms and a start date of the contract terms, and those would all be realigned to a new calendar really without concern. We've looked at that. We've also looked at moving calendar in slow increments over time. So not doing a big move in 1 year. We know we have some districts that moved up their start date 3 or 4 weeks. We would look at doing that incrementally over time. The second question, absolutely, we can pursue a shorter term, and we can stop at any time that the board's direction. So there's nothing that would beholden us to follow that for the extended time. So there's a great deal of flexibility, and that's what it's meant to allow for.
Any other discussion? Okay, I've had a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? None? That vote is unanimous. Audience members, the Board of Trustees now will conduct a public hearing to hear feedback on the decision to pursue District of Innovation designation. This public hearing is a required step in the process for becoming a District of Innovation. Is there anyone who would like to step to the microphone and provide feedback at this time? Hearing none and seeing nobody jump up, our next agenda item tasks the board with naming the committee for the District of Innovation. A recommended list of members has been compiled and provided in your board book for consideration. As noted in the materials, board members may name others to the committee. Are there any changes or additions to be made to this list? Ms. Frabacek?
In looking at the committee list that was provided, I wanted to see a little more participation from community and parent to complement the time provided by our staff. So I reached out to several folks, and I do have confirmation from them, so I'd like to present them to the board for your consideration for addition to this list. And that is Delrin Fleming, community member, Luke Erlenbush, parent, and Rosa Petschke, parent. And they're not being voluntold, they did commit. Delrin Fleming.
Luke Ehrenbush.
Erlenbush.
Erlenbush. And Rose Petschke?
Rosa Petschke.
Rosa.
I'll send a list if
We'll have
approved
those
with
names.
contact.
Okay.
If the board approves the committee, then Dr. Warnock will reach out to them
Okay.
and officially invite them.
Any others, board members? Is there a motion to be made regarding the naming of the committee for District of Innovation? Mr. Shackman.
I would make a motion that we accept with the 3 additions that Ms. Herbacek provided, the recommendation of a group to serve as the Committee for District Innovation.
I have a motion from Mr. Shackman. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
I have a second from Ms. Valenzuela. Her hand came up right before yours, I'm sorry. Any discussion? We have any discussion about this? All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? None. That vote is unanimous. Our,
One discussion. I would just say I'm pleased with the direction we're heading, hopefully, with this. And I look forward to figuring out that it might be something we can do to help our kids.
I'm extremely pleased with the direction we're heading on this myself. Our next agenda item is number 10, report on facility assessment study. Dr. Burns.
Yes, thank you, President Matthews. Members of the board, as you know, this has been something that the district and the staff has been working on for a while to kind of give you some information regarding the status of our facilities, and tonight we're ready to bring that study to you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. David Finley, our COO, Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Burns, President Matthews, board members. As a tactical step in our 2020 vision plan, we issued a request for qualifications for architectural services to conduct a comprehensive facility assessment for the district. At that time, 8 firms submitted qualifications, and Corgan was selected to complete and conduct this assessment. Primary to this effort was to establish district needs and priorities to inform a short, medium, and long-range facility plan. Ultimately, we want this information to be the underpinning of the foundation for a recommendation to the board for a long-range building program. Each of you should have received or have received a copy of the report. It looks like this, long and skinny. Additionally, we will get to you an electronic copy of the comprehensive facility assessment, and you'll see why that will be in electronic form in a second. It's very, very big. Tonight, we are pleased to have with us members of the Corgan team to present this summary facility assessment. We have Steve Holsey and Ryan Connell, and they'll be presenting it to you here in just a second. Steve is the executive managing principal for Corgan, And at this time, I will invite him to the podium to present the assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, President Matthews, Dr. Burns, members of the board. Ryan and I are happy to be here tonight to present this overview of our assessment. And as David represented, you have the outline of our presentation tonight. This is the copy of the assessment book that you will get in electronic format, and that's why we don't have them now, because it's quite large and cumbersome. Thought electronic would be a lot better to have and pass around. So going through this, just want to, our teams and teams that we have that did this assessment is the Corrigan team. We did the architecture, the buildings, and the sites. Also, Estes McClure Associates, and they have representatives here tonight, did the mechanical, electrical, plumbing of the facilities, as well as True North Technology, and you're going to hear from True North in a little bit, or your next agenda item, regarding technology in the district. We also wanted to say thank you. We have been associated. I was walking in the front door and saw our plaque out there in 1983. We've been working in the district for a long time, been partners for a long time, and are very happy and proud to be continuing our work with you. So overview of what we did and what the schedule is. So as David said, we started on August 3rd with the approval here at the board meeting, and right after that we got to work. So we started assembling, gathering plans, gathering information from the district so that we could put together our plan and go out and visit all of the sites. So in September and into October, our 4 teams went and visited every site in the district and did the assessment of soup to nuts, everything inside of every facility across the entire district. The October and November timeframe, as we were finishing up our field reports, then we were also working on the assembly of this document and putting it all together and collating it and making sure it all fit together precisely. And then tonight we're giving you a presentation of our progress. In this whole process, as David talked about too, all of the bubbles that you see here on the left side are your vision, the equity, individual campus plans, facility condition, demographics, assessment. All of those pieces are all part of this puzzle that we're beginning the process of putting together. Those will be going through in a typical process that most districts do, is go through a filter of community input, financial input, feasibility, and schedule to come out with at the end what will be a immediate, medium-term, long-term plan for the district for your future as you move forward. And this is just one piece of that puzzle that makes up this whole process. So our scope, we reviewed all 26 elementary schools, 6 middle schools, 4 high schools, your 4 centers, and then 8 support facilities. So every building that you have in the entire district, we've taken a look at, which is over 5 million square feet, and you serve over 25,000 students in the district. So what this report says, it's 2 pieces that come together to make the assessment. So the condition report, and that tells where your buildings are today related to the architecture, which is the roof, the walls, the floor, the finishes, things that make up the building. The MEP systems, which are the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, lighting, air conditioning, security, all of the other systems that are in the building. And then technology. And technology is the cabling, the racks, and all of the devices that go into each facility. So that's one side of the bucket. The other side is the capacity. And the capacity study that we conducted that we'll show you in part 2 has to deal with the exact utilization of your schools today. So that's input from staff to tell how the schools are being used and what each room's being used for. And I'll explain more about that in part 2 of this. Both of those come together to give you a picture of the district facility-wise where you are standing today. So the condition summary. So our process was, as I said, we walked all of the schools. We went and looked at all of the spaces and looked at all of our different functions and categories that we have inside the building. During this process, we also got input from your staff. We talked to the maintenance department, we talked to some of the administration, and we talked to the technology department to get their view as well on the facilities, what they've done and what the status of in their mind, so that we can incorporate their views into the report as well. This is one example of the report. So each school has a detailed report that talks about each facility. In these reports, the areas of focus that we have are site. So site is exterior of the building. It's landscape, it's parking, it's roads, it's sidewalks, it's everything that has to do with outside the building. The exterior of the building itself. So that's the roof, the walls, the windows, the doors, everything that encloses the building. The interior of the school, of the facilities, which have to do with all of the finishes inside of the building, the condition of the walls, the condition of the interiors, millwork, everything that makes up inside. The MEP systems, so all of the systems in the building. Your air conditioning, your lighting, your plumbing, your security systems, and then the technology. These examples are what the report says, so you have an overview that's shown on this sheet that just shows all of the roll-up of the scores and the average of the score for each facility. We've graded each facility on the same grading factor so that you can have a picture of the district overall of what the grades are and what they mean or reflect based on each other. Included in the report also is an updated floor plan and site plan. We've updated everything, all the plans that the district had, make sure that all the any new construction, any walls, any doors, any things that had moved around since the last assessment was done in 2003, all those plans have been updated and are part of this report. And then have photographic evidence. So photographic evidence of things that we saw reflected in the report that you can go back to and say, here's what a typical classroom looks like, here's what a mechanical system looks like, things like that. Those are all the components of the report. So our scoring that we have is based on this scale. So 90 to 10 is excellent, 80 to 89 is good, 70 to 79 is fair, 65 to 70 is deficient, and then below 65 is poor. And we put this life cycle of a building on here just to represent that life cycle that goes around from build, use, maintain, repair, replace. When you get to 65 or below, that's when the cost to renovate or do major work to a building becomes where you're basically going to be spending good money after bad. That's kind of the tipping line, that under that 65 score is when you should consider some other function or something else to do with the facility. So that's the replace and then plan for some new function or a new building in those conditions. So your district scores that you have, and here's the results of the district scores. So 7 in excellent condition, 13 in good condition, 14 in fair condition, 2 in deficient condition, and then the average score was 81% across the district. So 81%, so across the district, all of your facilities are good. Except the average of the scores is good. What we saw, and doing a quick overview of what the facilities and what we saw in the district. So we know your last bond program was in 2003. Average age of your schools across the district is 31 years. Facilities are well maintained. They've been kept up well. They look good. The systems are, there's some that have life cycle replacements that are needed, but overall the district has been kept up very good. There's a few urgent repairs that we saw out there. One of them, there's a slab issue at one of the schools at Central that's being taken care of, but overall there was no major issues that we saw across the district related to your facilities. In the site, some of the things that we noticed in site, which are our normal district or normal facility uses, is evidence of cracking and heaving at sidewalks due to soil movement. So that's one of the pictures that you see here. Dirt moves, sidewalks crack, sidewalks move, they become unlevel. It's just part of our black gumbo dirt that we have here in the district. Pavement restriping needed at many facilities, so the striping is worn off and needs to be upgraded or refreshed. And then some conditions, as you see by this stair in this other picture, where erosion has occurred and is washing dirt down on the sidewalks or out in the parking lot or washing away the grass, and it's things that just need to be taken care of. Exterior. So roofs are on a life cycle program, and some of the roofs are new and some of the roofs are ready to be replaced. And there's a plan in place in the district, but there are some that need to be replaced sooner than others. As you can see in this one picture of the crack, there's sealants failures across the district where once again, it's a normal wear and tear thing on where caulk gets old, it releases from what it's supposed to do, it needs to be pulled out and be replaced at control joints and other locations around windows. And then there's still some windows in the district that are not as efficient as they could be. Some of the old metal framed windows with single pane glass instead of an insulated window that has 2 panes of glass that helps with the transmission of heat and cold in and out. So there's still some of those that should be replaced, as well as there's some locations where the pavement's settled at the building. So buildings in most cases, are setting on piers and grade beams that are to the rock, and they're solid in the foundation. Sometimes sidewalks are not, so they move up and down. So there's some conditions where that is moved up and down, and it may be creating a tripping hazard, or it may be conflicting with a door or something like that around the building. So that's conditions to address. On the interior is kept up well, but there is some conditions across the district where you've had newer additions and older parts of the buildings, and so you can tell in some of the buildings there's not a cohesive flow with all the finishes across the building. There's some parts of the buildings are older than others, so that doesn't mesh. Some buildings that could have a lot better clarity in the signage and wayfinding inside the facility. So as you're walking in, knowing where things are and where to go. And then accessibility. Some of the older campuses still have some handicap accessibility issues, plumbings, fixtures, restrooms, doorknobs, some doors, some ramp situations that still need to be addressed. Mechanical system. So the mechanical system is just like the roofs. It's on a life cycle. They only last so long. The district has done well in maintaining them, but there's some that are at the end of life right now that need to start being replaced, and there's some that are brand new, and there's everywhere in between. And then the energy management and control systems. So those are the computers that run the air conditioner in the buildings, that you run the programs that control it. And just like every other computer that you have in the district, it's something that needs to be refreshed and needs to be updated on a constant cycle. Replacement of exterior lighting at parking lot lighting and building wall packs with LED fixtures. So LED fixtures are a process that most districts, and your district is going through as well, that are a lot more efficient than the old fluorescent type or metal halide lights. So going through a program of continuing what you've done and completing that, not only with the exterior lighting, but with the interior lighting at all the classrooms, so that you can have that much longer lasting and more efficient light fixtures, is a program that should continue. And then there's some places where electrical systems are over 35 years old, and the average life nationally of electrical systems about 30 to 35 years. And so that comes to the point where if it hasn't failed, it's getting pretty old and needs to be replaced and put on a plan to be replaced. And you have a few of those in the district as well. The plumbing systems. So there's some water heaters that are end of their useful life. Just like the other systems, all of the systems are on a regular rotation to be replaced. The program of replacing electric water coolers with the handicapped accessible water coolers that have the bottle fillers, where you can go fill up a bottle on there as well. That program is in process. And then, as you can see, there's still some electric water coolers that aren't accessible that need to be replaced in the district. The fire systems, fire protections. A lot of your buildings are sprinkled, but there is some of them that still don't have a fire sprinkler system installed in them, or either part or most of buildings. There's not very many, but there is a few that should go on a program to go ahead and complete that sprinkler systems in there. And then fire alarms also are part of, just like they're a computer as well. They go through their life cycles and work and have better technologies that need to be replaced and work through that life cycle on it. So in technology, technology was prioritized into 3 different levels. And priority 1 upgrades are technology, space, and structured cabling. So as you can see in this picture, creating dedicated space for the technology racks in the schools that's only for that's securable, so that there's not other storage or other things going on there in the rooms. You have situations of that in the district that need to be taken care of and replaced, and then putting the right power and electricity and air conditioning in those rooms as well, so that the technology investment you have is protected in a secured space. And switching electronics and uninterrupted power supply. just like we talked about with the MEP systems. Just making sure that you're going through and refreshing the life cycle. And so we've got a 5-year program here to refresh all of the technology systems as well. The unified communications is your telephone system, and then the end user devices. Making sure that the program for what kids have in their hands and educators have in their hands is on a refresh program also to make sure that everybody has the most up-to-date equipment. Priority 2, so augmenting your wireless systems that you have in your district to make sure that they're always keeping up with the faster phones and the faster devices and the faster everything. Your public address systems and your video and security access control, they're both computers, and we've put into place here a program as well, a 5-year program to keep refreshing all of those systems across the district as well. And then the wide area network, you have 2 facilities that we need to connect to the WAN, 2 of your newer facilities to make sure so they're on the fiber loop that you have in the district. And then the classroom and special AV and multimedia also is, make sure it is on a 5-year refresh program so that there's always the new technology in the classrooms. So that's a quick overview of what we found in the assessment. The capacity summary is the utilization of the district facilities as you're using them today. And so we took the campus floor plans and reviewed them with the principals and the staff on site so that we know exactly, it's a snapshot in time, and know that this classroom is a first grade classroom, this is an ESL classroom, this is a special ed, this is used as storage, so that you know, so that we can do a capacity study based upon today's utilization of those rooms. We also rolled into that demographic data so that we know the number of students that you have there, the number of students that are projected, and able to identify the number of students that could fit into that school optimally. And then we based all of that on TEA guidelines. So TEA guidelines give the number of classroom square footage that should be for a number of students that fit into each different levels of classes across the district. This is a copy of the report that you see, and here's a blow-up of what this report shows. So in each school, it's going to show the room number, the room name, the room use, square footage of the room, whether it or not that room, the way it's being used today, meets TEA guidelines, which means if it's a first grade classroom, it needs to be 800 square foot minimum. So it's a yes or a no there. And then the design capacity. So the design capacity is based on the square footage, based upon TEA guidelines, how many students could fit into that square footage of classroom. So looking at the district overall, this is the overall score for your capacity study in the district. So your campus utilization, you have 1 at 85%, 6 at 76 to 85%, 14 at 66 to 74%, and 13 at 65% or below. So giving you an average campus utilization of 68% across the district. And there it is broken down again, 70% at elementary average, 68% at middle school average, and 62% at the high school average. And to give you an example, 100% means it's completely full, obviously. So that's the level that you're at. These are the schools and all of their capacities that you could read better in the report that you have a printout, but here's a bar chart that shows the district overall. So the bottom line is 50%. 68% is the dotted line in the middle, which is your average capacity. And then you can see some schools you're above that 68% average, and some you're way below that 68% average. And what this tells us in a planning scenario, in a long-range planning scenario, is you look at this graph here. So the bottom of the blue bar is your 68% average that you have. When we're doing long-range master plans for districts and we're planning for utilization of districts, the general percentage that we use for facilities, efficient facilities use and efficient facility number of students and staff is an 85% factor. 85% factor gives you some flexibility in planning and gives you some flexibility in the growth so that if you have more students come in a year, you're able to contain them in the facility as well, and it gives you flexibility in the use of the rooms, or the facility, because not every classroom is going to have 22 to 1 or 20 to 1. You may have an ESL class that has 6 or a special education class that has 10. So that, using that whole average, the 85% factor is the planning module that we've used in many other districts. So key points of the capacity study that we found is that the opportunities to utilize unused space more effectively. So you could use spaces that support the expansion of innovative programming, spaces that support student engagement, and alignment of facility uses to the CFB vision, high achievement for each student. So there's lots of opportunities that you have now based upon the capacity that you have in the district currently. And with that, I'm through.
Thank you, Steve and Ryan. As I mentioned earlier, the important piece of this assessment is the data that it provides. It can provide data that will inform our facility plan. It also can provide data that helps in our effectiveness and efficiency of our facility services department. It's a living document, and that's an important piece to know. So we'll be updating this in district as things are changed and improved upon, and so this document will constantly be in motion. In addition, we want the assessment to be a use to you guys. And so that is why you're going to get the full assessment. We want it to be a resource that you all can refer to when you go to planning meetings or to workshops. And we want that to get input from you from this facility assessment. So we want you to use it also. And in that, I will close the presentation and open up to questions. The team will be here to answer anything you may have. Thank you.
Board members, any questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll go on to our next agenda item. It's number 11, report on technology relocation plan. Dr. Burns.
Thank you, President Matthews, member of the board. And there'll be plenty of time for some more conversations and dialogue. We don't want to rush you, but we do want you to have kind of the scope of it all and be able to dig through some of that data. And as David said, you'll get the comprehensive report that may even give you a little bit more insight into what questions to ask, right? And you're at that point now, there's a lot of data here. The next part really, though, is that technology and instruction is seamless nowadays. Technology and buildings are really seamless today. They go hand in hand. And so we have looked comprehensively at technology and want to bring you that report tonight. So also, Mr. Finley is going to be telling you about that as well. Mr. Finley.
Thank you again, Dr. Burns, President Matthews, board members. We're going to continue with this theme of assessment and move on to technology. Recently, the district has been approached by the City of Farmers Branch, interested in purchasing the property where the building sits that houses our Technology Learning Center as well as our Network Operating Center. Administration felt that for the board to make an informed decision, we wanted to bring on board a third-party consultant to do a comprehensive feasibility study in this case for the relocation of the services housed in our Technology Learning Center, and also a feasibility study to relocate the Network Operating Center. Again, a request for qualifications was issued, and the firm of True North was selected to perform this very complex operation and study, as you'll see. The team is led by Ricky Fisher and Tony, and I'm not even going to attempt to say his last name because I will butcher it mercilessly. So anyway, they're here to walk us through this presentation. You should, again, have a copy of the report and the summary report that you'll see tonight at each of your spot. And I will turn it over to Mr. Fisher now to conduct his study.
Okay, thank you. So let me just start off by saying we had a team of people to look at this feasibility and process of relocation options for the Technology Learning Center. These are 5 of the people that worked on the project. Tony Chanowski and I are here representing True North. And, you know, we have specialists that were assigned specifically to this project based on the requirements. So we're going to go through, and I think David sort of made a good introduction of the purpose of this study, but we're also going to talk about the process that we went through, the metrics that we came up to evaluate different site options, what those site options were, and you know, we also looked at impact to schedule, impact to cost, to sort of give you a really good idea of what's involved in this relocation. So one of the first things that we did relative to being able to analyze this is we looked at the existing space program at the TLC. What are the functions in that facility? What are the square footages that are needed? And we evaluated those very carefully with the staff. We looked at opportunities for shared spaces to see how efficiently that space could be used. And we also have to take into consideration this is your primary data center that's located in this facility. So if this facility was to be sold, that data center would have to be relocated. And relocation of a data center is very much like a heart transplant. And it's a very complex procedure because you need to keep the patient alive, and your fiber network is like a circulatory system, and the blood cells are like the data that goes throughout the district. So it's a very complex problem to look at, and there are processes that can be put in place to make that a good scenario and good process. So we looked at the 3 site options that were presented in the RFQ, and they included the Mary Grimes Education Center, which is a renovated facility. It was renovated in 1989. It was a pretty substantial renovation because it was originally a warehouse type of structure, and it's currently in use. Site option 2 was the annex directly behind this building, the admin annex, which was the original warehouse for the district, and the 3rd site option was a greenfield site at La Valita Boulevard and Camino Lago in Irving. And of course, that Irving site is in the tax increment finance zone number 1, and that also has some other impacts and opportunities for the district. You know, one thing that is important to note is that in 2 existing facilities, taking the program requirements of a data center and the technology learning center and trying to fit those into an existing envelope requires quite a bit of renovation and reconfiguration, and there's always compromises involved in the design process. So, you know, a new site has a distinct advantage from a program standpoint that the design can be the most responsive, and there's always compromises in an existing facility. So we actually looked at each site, evaluated each building. We evaluated the space program, which we're going to go over in just a minute. We evaluated the district's fiber network. Tony is a fiber specialist, and that whole outside plant, we had to look at where all that fiber goes and how that needs to be modified to accommodate any one of these sites. We looked at the data center in detail, the network electronics that are in place, the core electronics, the things that make the data center work, as well as the infrastructure for cooling, power, backup, and many of these items are approaching their end of their useful life. In other words, they're really reaching the point where many of these systems will have to be replaced that support that function. This is also a consideration. We evaluated the scope and you know, of the current network services, the bandwidth that's currently being used, looked at that with industry standards because we know that that continues to grow, the amount of bandwidth that's required per student. And FCC has standards now for that you know, shows growth as much as 50% in bandwidth per year per student. So this evaluation led us to, at the end of this report, we'll talk about our recommendations. So one of the first things we did when we sat down with the technology representatives and district representatives is looked at what are the metrics that we're going to look at and evaluate against each one of these sites. And these are actually in the report document, I think on page 4, They're shown in greater detail for you, but in summary, these are the 7 categories. First is the program itself, the spaces that have to go into this facility, and how suitable that site would be. The next is the involvement of the fiber, that circulatory system, what's involved in actually, creating that bypass to keep the district up and running during that cutover period. Because obviously you can't turn the district off, build, and then wait and finish a new data center. And most data centers that we're involved in, there is some degree of cutover, and we have to maintain all those services that are provided. We had to look in detail at the network electronic devices. Is there any impact for the sites for those? And in reality, if you're going to follow best practice for the design of the data center, the actual location really doesn't have an impact. If there were different schedules that we were looking at, they may have an impact. But if we're trying to look at this move on the same timeline, they really don't, they aren't impacted by the site location. Schedule, the project schedule for the development of the design and for the actual implementation of construction is impacted by those site selections. I think it's important to mention too that, part of this project for us, we really did not do a design. There is no design here. We did look at the program very carefully, and we did some work that I'll show you in a second that speaks to the relationships of those types of spaces and functions that are very important to be used in the design process, but we don't have a design. That wasn't our charge. So we have a the project schedule, how that's impacted, I just mentioned. Also, funding sources are different for each site location because of the TIF fund availability and preliminary construction costs. We really developed kind of a magnitude cost to see what the impact difference would be. So the existing data center, as we mentioned, is really, the building was acquired in '99, so a lot of the systems for the infrastructure of that facility were put in place then. And data centers have changed dramatically in 15 to 17 years. They're much smaller and they're more dense, but the power and cooling requirements continue to be very large. So one of the things that is very important in a new design is that the data center is responsive to change. And if I had to identify 1 or 2 things in a good data center design today, is they're a lot more flexible and they're a lot more efficient. And these are very important things that present this potential relocation as an opportunity for the district to really upgrade that capability. So that existing building, I'm sure everyone's fairly familiar with it, is 62,000 square feet. It has all the training facilities, has the data center, and a whole bunch of ancillary spaces that are included that support the district's technology needs. So this is sort of hard to read on here, but this is a program that was originally included in the RFQ. We did go over this in great detail and look for opportunity to share spaces within the facility. It's a very efficient, so really, a total square footage in that facility that was identified for technology and also in the ancillary spaces were about 22,000 square feet. There was also a document that was included in our package in the RFQ that included a conceptual design for a conference center. We also have that program here included, so we could look at that relative to these sites as well. As I mentioned, one of the things we did do while we were meeting, we wanted to capture some of the data from the technology group of when it gets to the design phase, how these spaces need to relate to one another, and that's what this affinity matrix does. it essentially says what spaces are important to be close to each other so that the systems can be efficiently managed and the building can work and be managed very well. So this is just something that's usable in the future design process. So we looked at sort of a schedule sequence, and we've coded these. Blue is site option number 1, which is the Mary Grimes building. And this is an existing facility, so there is quite a bit of work that's indirect cost to the new would be indirect cost to the new design and fitment of the program to that building. This adds both to the design schedule, because there's a lot of validation that needs to take place of systems that are already built and in place. Do we keep it? Do we tear it out? Do we modify it? And this generally adds a little bit of complexity and cost to that process. But the sequence is really very similar in this type of facility as it would be in a new facility. The difference is that those things that grab you are, you have to make compromises. You can't just take the industry best practice for a facility like a data center and plug it into an existing building. It's very difficult to do that, especially when you're trying to accommodate systems that are already there and in place. So new construction in that sense has some advantages. What's shown here in yellow at the bottom and involves the fiber. To actually get the fiber ready for this new location, it can basically float on that schedule. But prior to occupancy, those interim connections, much like the heart bypass in a transplant, you have to have that heart-lung machine keeping everything going until you basically cut over. So those can float, but prior to occupancy, those systems need to be cut over and operational. So the new site, it does give you the opportunity to follow best practices very closely. It also can help compress the design process and also can help accelerate construction, because you don't have to work around systems that have to be modified. Basically, all the costs are direct to that particular design. So I guess the other thing that is definitely worth mentioning and may be obvious is that all 3 of these locations have the potential to utilize net proceeds from the sale of Carrick Street, the existing TLC. Also, you have the ability to use fund balance that you would want to apply to a project like this. And another option is to plan for a bond that relates to this. Site option 3 does have an advantage in the sense that you do have the TIF zone, and provided that you can get a TIF board approval, you have funds that can be applied to this project in addition to those other options. So we did do a sort of magnitude cost, and in order to do this, again, we don't have a design. So they're basically costs that are based on RS means, which is a standard that we utilize, and interpolating those costs as well as historical data that we maintain on data centers that we do as well. And one thing that's interesting is that the Grimes site could accommodate the TLC space program. You could actually get it to fit, although with compromise you could get it to fit. Site option 2, really, once we assessed it, looked at the square footage and the geometry of it, it was impractical. You can't fit even the basic requirements for the TLC into that building, primarily because the building is only 40 feet deep and it's very long. It was designed as a warehouse, so that's why you have so many exterior entrances. So if you really tried to design the spaces to work together, you don't have enough square footage, shape, or geometry to make it fit. So we really don't think it's even practical to look at that site. There are also site constraints that are a consideration for delivery service. It's a very tight drive as well. So we really did not pursue that from a cost standpoint or a schedule standpoint because it just won't work. So the Grimes can accommodate the TLC program, but it would not accept, or would not be able to accommodate a conference center. If you look at the Camino Lago La Valeta site, you do have the ability to get all of that program square footage into that property. So what happens is the additional cost that you would have in dealing with a renovated building where mechanical systems will have to be not only replaced and electrical systems, they have to be removed and replaced. You have indirect costs associated with those items. So even though the magnitude cost for the new site is higher, when you look at square footage that you're actually capable of building, you know, the existing building, it came out to about 34% more expensive per square foot because you can't really build the amount of square footage. And I think that's a very important consideration. So we took the metrics and we looked at the sites, and then we actually scored each one of these 7 categories against each site. And this summary page kind of shows us those scores, and these bars kind of give us the advantages of each. And again, it's not exactly apples to apples because, as we mentioned, site option 3 would be able to accommodate this conceptual design that we saw for a conference center. The other real advantage to being able to accommodate that is those spaces can actually serve a lot of functions for training, for other uses by the district, and could really be shared. So that is another distinct advantage. And really because of that and because of the cost, in evaluating each one of these metrics, the site option 3 just really floated right up to the top as the best option. So, and that's really what we show in our recommendation. You know, the relocation of a data center is very, very complex. The opportunity, though, that it presents to relocate that data center and to build a data center that's current with industry standards, it can be more efficient, more cost-effective with respect to energy for cooling and power, and it can scale better. We know technology changes. I'm sure things come to the board, you know, to upgrade your capability and your bandwidth. The data center designs today and following those standards give you the ability to make those upgrades and scale that thing, that data center, a lot more easily and more efficiently. So I think that's also a very important consideration. And that's our presentation. And we do have a large binder of all the data that we collected that's not in this report, but we extracted from that for this report, and we have that available to the district, both in hard copy and electronically as well.
But it's a little bit smaller than Steve, so we're not going to show it.
Yeah, we're not. Well, you didn't compare weight, but that's it.
Thank you, Ricky. And that concludes our feasibility study for the relocation of the TLC and the NOC. The current facility that has housed the TLC has served the district well over a number of years. But with many of the systems, as Ricky mentioned, reaching the end of life, we're presented with a unique opportunity. An opportunity that we can grab existing resources, an opportunity that we can incorporate the needed system changes and upgrades into a new facility, and the opportunity to increase and affect our operations effectiveness and efficiency. The utilization of the existing TIF funds, as mentioned, is an important consideration for this project, as it provides the district with an opportunity to move forward with a building program and avoid future debt obligations that would be associated with upgrading the existing facility in the very near future. So with that, I will turn this over to Ms. Tillman.
Thank you. This is not an action item this evening. Each of you have received an additional report that we wanted to give you the opportunity to review. I know you're all aware with our Irving TIF funds, those, it is nearing the end. December of 2018 is the end of that TIF project. And so if the district is interested in pursuing this opportunity, we are going to have to start acting fairly quickly. We have gotten various legal opinions in terms of how much time we have after the TIF ends to spend funds. You can basically continue with a project that has been committed. The definition of a commitment can vary among lawyers, so it depends on what your risk tolerance level is. We'll still be making a payment after the project ends on December 31, 2018, our last TIF payment. So we feel more comfortable that if we have a project well underway and all the contracts obligated and issued and just had that finished by the end of our 18-19 fiscal year, which would work with this particular timeline if we started moving very quickly at the beginning of the year, we could have it complete by the time the fiscal year ended that we were making our last payment. We'd be more comfortable with that. The further we get away from December 31, you know, our comfort level will not be as high with that type of project. So potentially in January, if the board has interest, we would be potentially discussing a sale of the current property and also looking to extend the contract we had with Corgan, who began initial concept designs on a program like this, and we would be more specific with that. So that would be two options of items that we may consider in January. But we wanted to give you time to review and send us any questions so we could begin to determine if there is interest in us pursuing this.
Okay.
We do have Mr. Fisher here available if you have any specific questions about his report before we leave this item.
Ms. Klein?
Okay, so I have a question for Dr. Burns. Couldn't we use the Farmers Branch TIF funds to pay to relocate the spine of the network to get the building to be accessible for somebody else to use the property?
I think that's the million-dollar question, or multi-million-dollar question in this case, that we've been working with our council to figure out. We're not sure on some things. We are sure is with what we could do in Irving would be to use the Irving money because we'd be building a new facility. We'd be building it in the TIF. Do you want to add anything to that, Ms. Tillman?
To use the Farmers Branch TIF funds, it would have to be within the Farmers Branch TIF zone or be able to make a connection that it's benefiting the students within the Farmers Branch. Was that your question about Farmers
Yes.
Branch funds? Yes.
I think it would
and
be
it's not as
benefiting
much.
the
It's not
TIF
as much.
area.
Yeah.
Yes, I
It's not-
understand.
yeah.
But I think that we don't see a lot of opportunities of where to use that Farmers Branch TIF money.
Correct. Although we do believe we could identify some projects outside the TIF if they were willing to let us use that money that could benefit the district and the kids that live in the Farmers Branch side. So.
And I do have a couple of questions. I'm not clear at all on where the option 3 site location is. On page 23, it's kind of like, huh? So I just see a very broad guess, but I figure that there'd be more details on where that would be. But the question I have is to do with the spine kind of all feeds to the TLC. So do you build a new, 6-inch pipe, bore all the way to Irving, or is there something already in place that's smaller, or how do you do that?
Actually, and Tony looked really carefully at that because we have all, the existing fiber layout and how many strands. We also met with the maintenance contractor who maintains that fiber for you. And we looked at and actually did physical measurements for each of these sites, how far that fiber would have to extend. And it's a fairly elaborate process for the transition, but it's pretty simple that we have to essentially cut out the Carrick Street location and we provide a interim connection to the key existing district facilities while that cutover takes place. But we have to extend fiber out to that new location.
My experience has been cutting over like a 9,000 pair of fiber can take, 3-4 months. So you're saying build like a temporary go around and then do the connection?
Exactly. I mean, the best analogy I can use, it's like heart bypass surgery. You essentially, build that interim connection. We do a series of testing to identify those strands, and you have 12 strands to each location right now. So you have the fiber capacity there to make these interim bypass connections so that you can keep things going during that cutover. And then once all the systems are moved over, you cut it. And this is a very, I don't want to say it's simple, because it's not. It's very complicated, requires a lot of planning, but it's something that's done probably on 90% of the data centers that we do.
And then my last question is on page 41 in the summary recommendations and metric scorecard. I'm kind of curious, you've got an estimated recurring cost impact, and the option 3 has the lowest points. So you think that maintaining your location service is the most expensive with that option? Is it because it's longer, or?
Let me see.
Page 41.
Yep.
Of the
So which item?
2D.
Yeah, that's basically is a function of
The
let's see,
magnitude of the
a magnitude
amount.
of the fiber, and we the way we assigned it is we took actual footage.
So
took
this
your
is
existing-
closest.
We have copies of your existing maintenance agreements, and we applied that,
Okay.
and then scored them in order. And I mean, you have, I mean, I have to compliment you as a district and your technology group. You have a really robust fiber wide area network, and it really allows you to look at this option practically. Because, if you didn't have that infrastructure in place, it'd be a lot tougher to deal with.
I was actually at the city when a lot of it was installed and approved a lot of the permits, so that's how I got to work with the school district originally. Okay. That was my last question.
Yes, Mr. Ramos.
With regards to site option 1 and 3, obviously, because 2 isn't really a consideration, on page 15, you came up with the estimate of about approximately 12.3 million. Did that take in, I didn't see it on there, and I just want to make sure it doesn't take into consideration the replace and remove and replace that would be associated with site 1, correct?
Yeah, well, let me make sure I understand your question, because one cost we did not include, we mentioned it in the report, is that you have existing programs in that building. So in order for construction to start, you have to find a new home for that program. Now, is that going to be an existing facility? Is it going to be a facility that requires renovation? There is cost associated with that. We identified that in the report. We did not identify a cost for that.
So there's no numerical value associated with it. Okay, thank you. And then on page 17 with the metric scorecard, with regards to metric 1 and metric 6, seems like everything on metric 1 and metric 6, site option 3, doubles the point value that was associated to site option 1. I'm just curious as to how you came up with a numerical value that was associated with considering those numbers.
So which metric, which number metric?
Everything on 1, A, B, and C.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Site option 3 doubles site option 1, the point system. So I
Yes.
was wondering, and the same with metric 6, it more than doubles it as well. Those are the ones that stuck out to me the most, and I was curious as to how you associated a point system or a numerical value to those particular metrics and
Sure.
those subcategories.
So let me attack first number 1. The fact is, based on the standards that, there's 2 main industry standards for data centers, and I'm familiar with what those are as far as best practice, aisle containment, cooling, power, and there are, in any existing facility, there are going to be considerable compromises. And you're going to have to come back from that industry standard because it will be impractical. With the funding sources, we felt that really site option 1 and 2, you have the same funding sources available. Site option 3, you have the ability, if you can have this approval of TIF funds from the TIF board, pretty substantial difference of availability of funding. So, we thought it was overwhelmingly an advantage with respect to funding. Everything else being the same, they would be all equal if the TIF funds weren't available.
Mr. Shackman?
In today's world, what are we talking about as we project if we built a brand new data center, a new NOC, what's the life expectancy? And does that life expectancy, will it be longer because of a new facility versus the old?
The simple answer is yes. I mean, when I look at the way the standards have changed in the design and construction of data centers, the newer standards and approaches, the way that power is handled, the way that cooling is handled, they're much more scalable. And I can drill down into a lot of detail for you, but I mean, power distribution is a really good example. In the new data centers that we design, the way that the power is distributed, it's 3-phase power, it's on a busway. The district can add equipment, add cabinets, add power, and not even call an electrician. It's all modular. You really have a lot of things at your disposal in the new design that will make that scaling a lot easier in the future. And that's not just power, it's everything. It's cooling, your data network itself, the way that the inner communication cabling is done now in the data centers. So these are all real advantages, not only on the long term, but to make incremental changes, and recurring costs can be far less. And that's a big cost of it.
Any other questions, board members? Comments?
Mr. Matthews, before you leave that, just to say, the really great thing is we have lots of options. The really hard thing is there's a lot of options, and it gets kind of complicated. So we know that there are a lot of moving parts. We want to give you as much information as you can, and then we'll put together what we believe, too, are strong recommendations that not only are short-term wins, but long-term wins, which we believe are in the best interest of our district, our students, and our taxpayers. And so, but it is a lot to get your head around. We know that, but we needed to get it to you so you'd have some time to chew on it in the next month or so. Ms. Tillman, you want to add anything?
I would also just add, within our existing TIF agreement, we already have a multi-purpose facility approved. So we believe that this facility would meet that definition because it could be serving multiple functions. As we get into the design, we'll be looking at those options as well. So we wouldn't necessarily have to go back through the TIF board for approval. That's already been done.
Okay. Ms. Robotic has another question.
And I don't know if somebody said something when you brought it up, but did anybody look yet at what would happen to what's happening in Mary Grimes? I mean, has there been evaluation, or is that part of the facility assessment?
That would be part of the total comprehensive, what we would do
okay.
with that. That also kind of gives it a -2 because we have an existing program in there, so we'd have to consider that.
And that adds to the schedule. Is that factored on the schedule too? That part of your schedule?
Probably not on their end. I'm not sure they looked at the existing program in there, other than just what was the technology need for it.
We just identified it as something that needed to be addressed.
Okay.
Because we don't know whether there's a facility where they can obviously, construction can't start until that's relocated.
No. It would create some
challenges.
Some challenges, yeah, it would. Yeah, and additional time probably.
Any other questions or discussions, board members? That leads us to agenda item number 12, report on transportation services. Dr. Burns?
Thank you, President Matthews, and members of the board. If you've realized, we've had some transportation, complications that the district now has to decide how it's going to deal with that. And so, as you are aware, with the vote of the demise or the termination of Dallas County Schools, and the district does have a seat at the table for the dissolution committee to protect the district's interest. But as you've heard from us even before that, in anticipation that we need to be planning for just that case, what if? And so we are presenting to you what if things we needed to be thinking about, and now we may need to be in what instead of what if. So, Ms. Tillman.
Thank you. So we wanted to start off and just talk about 17-18 and where we're at right now in that process. And I think everyone's fully aware at this point that the November 7th election resulted in the approval that Dallas County Schools would not continue. That very next day, we went out and met with the DCS staff that work for CFB. We asked that they continue to do what they do and get our kids to school safely, and that we would be moving as quickly as possible to make a decision, so that they have been in a state of unknown for quite some time, going back to the legislative session when first conversations started coming up about this. And so they are really anxious to find out what's happening with districts. That very next week, on November 15th, the first dissolution committee was held, whereby a member of each school district that was interested in serving was sworn in to serve on this committee. At that meeting, the committee also appointed a chief executive officer. The committee was able to hire one person that actually reports to the committee, and he's basically acting as a de facto superintendent to actually shut down Dallas County Schools. That individual is Alan King. He has a significant amount of experience. He's one that CFB recommended for the position, and we're very confident in his abilities, and he's very focused right now on making sure that we finish out the year with our schools and our students continuing to have the service. And so he's done a great job to keep things moving along. They also was a review of legislative charge that was provided by the author of the bill, who came and gave his intent of the law, which included a very narrow definition of what could continue for the 17-18 school year, related specifically to transportation services. And we'll talk more about how some of those items will impact us in 17-18. There was also a very preliminary report on the current financial condition of Dallas County Schools, with some very large concerns related to the 17-18 budget that was adopted by Dallas County Schools, which impacts us directly, concerns about the cash flow and also the debt payments that were upcoming, as well as concerns about maintaining staff to be able to complete the year and keep operations going. December 4th, the second dissolution committee meeting was held. Thompson and Horton attorneys were hired to provide legal services to the committee. There's many complex legal issues that are trying to be resolved. The law is written in such that it indicates that bond payments can continue with the tax rate, so the tax rate's not going away, but defining what goes into what the tax rate can be used for, because there's many different debt instruments that have been issued and utilized by Dallas County Schools. So they're trying to unravel what will actually go in and have the ability to be covered by the tax rate moving forward. Also on December 4th, there was some furniture that had been purchased recently. DISD was interested in purchasing that furniture, so the committee voted to vote and get that furniture out of a facility that was being leased, because there was no need for the building. They wanted to also give 30-day notice on the lease and terminate that agreement. Those actions we're taking as well. A big topic that will be coming up is crossing guard services. There's a belief that that doesn't fall within the guidelines that were written into the law for it to continue transportation services. So it's likely that at the next dissolution committee, they will be voting to determine if we're going to give 30-day notice to the city of Dallas, that they will need to be taking on the crossing guard services. This would free up about $3 million over the remainder of the school year that could then be utilized for cash flow and operations specific to transportation or any of the lease or debt payments potentially. There was another financial update that was given, which was much more detailed than the first one. Within that financial update, there was definite issues identified in the adopted budget. Many revenues overstated, many expenditures understated. Mr. Allen King is working through trying to come up with a realistic budget so that he can give us an idea of what our expenditures are actually going to look like for 17-18. We have great concerns. There's been many expenditures that have been added. For example, Dallas County Schools was required to pay over $900,000 for the election costs. That was already paid before Allen came on board. So, you know, those costs have to be picked up somewhere in this equation as we dissolve Dallas County Schools. So as we listen to that presentation, where we are at in terms of our operating costs, basically we've been held at the same level for 2 years, 15-16 and 16-17, when Dallas County Schools submitted their bid to us for 17-18. They also agreed to hold our costs to the prior year amount. Based upon the reports we're seeing, we don't expect that to be a realistic estimate at this point, and so we want to be sure the board is aware that this will likely result in a future amendment to our 17-18 budget so that we're able to finish out the year. You know, if we were to choose to withhold our payment, it could impact the ability of DCS to actually pay our drivers. Right now, all the cash flow is going first to meet payroll before it goes anywhere else. And Mr. King has made that commitment that the drivers and staff will get paid first priority. So some pending decisions that will be coming to the dissolution committee very soon is determining what the school year is. That was defined in the law that transportation could continue through the end of the school year. Right now, most districts are requesting that that go through July 31st. And so that'll be an item that the committee will be acting on, and that would be of a benefit to us to give us a little bit more time to get everything in order. Crossing guards, we currently have 3 campuses that are served by the Dallas County School crossing guards, so that could be impacted as well. We also utilize Dallas County Schools for 3 SROs that serve the campuses you see listed. It is likely that they're going to give us notice that this SRO program will be ending along with the crossing guard program. We're going to have to be looking at options in order that we can pick that up likely beginning in February. So we'll be looking at that and bring something to the board in January. Asset distribution, that is a big item for the dissolution committee. Largely the bus inventory is one of the items that we're most interested in. The way the law was written, it says at the end of the 17-18 school year, all school buses, vehicles, and bus service centers, although right now majority of those service centers were sold and the funds were used and then leased back, so I'm not sure how those would be distributed because they're not owned by Dallas County Schools. Shall be transferred to participating component school districts in proportionate shares equal to the amount of buses currently assigned to each district. And then you see the last line, final distribution and assignment of these assets will be not later than September 1 at no cost to the districts. That sounds really great on paper, but I'm not sure how it's going to work out by the time all the lawyers and everybody that has a place at the table related to the debt, how we're going to get these buses at no cost to the district. In terms of our inventory, right now we currently have 132 buses that we utilize that are assigned to CFB. Out of those buses, you can see we have 35 buses that are 2003 or older, meaning they're beyond their useful life. Out of those 35, 10 of those are in daily rotation, so they're running daily routes. Out of the 132 buses, DCS reports to us that 15 of those buses involve lease agreements. Now, if the others are paid in full or were purchased with debt issued, then there's the potential that we could get those free and clear. What we don't know is if we're going to get these 132 buses or not. because one of the ideas that the committee will be struggling with is to make sure all districts have an equitable fleet. In other words, we've got 35 buses that are beyond their life. I'm not sure if that's the norm for other districts. So it may be that, you know, there's a switch in buses to get everybody to the same average life of the bus fleet that they receive. So what we're working with right now, though, is that the initial idea is that we would get the 132 buses that we currently have on our lots, but we don't know that to be a fact yet. So as we look and go on to 1819, we've got to start making some decisions on whether or not we're going to bring transportation in-house for 1819, or if we're going to look at outsourcing to a third-party vendor. We have gone out for bids twice over the last year. We received pricing most recently from 2 vendors. As we look at these options, we just wanted to have a reminder that transportation services were provided through CFB and with CFB employees prior to contracting with Dallas County Schools, I believe, around 2004, 2005. CFB chose to move in-house services to Dallas County Schools due to the funding structure that Dallas County Schools provided to the district. The unique situation was that through Dallas County Schools, we had access to tax revenue that offset the cost, as well as we had access to state funding. Where we're at in terms of Chapter 41 impacts our ability to access that state funding that we were getting through Dallas County Schools. So that's the bigger impact on us, actually, than even the tax rate. CFB did not move to Dallas County Schools due to service issues at that time. As we look at options to bring in-house transportation to CFB, we looked at what the current staffing levels were at being offered at our service center, as well as what potentially would be required in terms of internal support. And we believe we would need to hire approximately 186 employees to bring transportation in-house. In terms of estimated expenditures, we were able to get from Dallas County Schools actual pay rates on all of the employees currently being charged to CFB. We did not have access to their names or their years of experience. We only had the description of bus driver and then a pay rate for the number of positions. So we took that information and converted it to an estimated payroll budget, as well as looked at all the other direct charges that we currently receive through Dallas County Schools, including software, supplies, any other items that would be coming through Dallas County Schools. We picked those up in our budget. And we also included capital of $1 million. Now we know right now if we get that fleet that we currently have of 132 buses, we are behind on our replacement schedule. So $1 million is only going to purchase 10 buses. But we think 10 is a minimum number because we think we need to get those 10 that are currently operating every day out of that rotation. You can see here with state funding, with Dallas County Schools, we've been getting approximately $1.6 million. But looking at our 18-19 funding, the way it works is if you're receiving Tier 1 funding from the state, then you potentially get your transportation allotment. But at the point that you're no longer receiving Tier 1, then you wouldn't get any of these funds. Depending on our wealth level and our student numbers next year, we're just on the edge of where we would likely not get it. So we could get some of it, but we're getting to the point where we likely would not. So we're not counting on that as we build the budget. We would likely not get those funds. Please note that this estimate is based upon information that we've been able to obtain to date from Dallas County Schools. We are just this week starting to get much more information now that Alan has had a few weeks at Dallas County Schools, and we feel like we'll be able to work even closer to get a better number, but this is what we were able to build with the data we have. As we look at third parties and look at best value that we've seen in terms of submissions to us right now, you can see that their cost also runs approximately $7.9 million. The thing to think about as we're looking at these is trying to measure the service that we're going to get from these two different options. As you start digging down into the details, we found that in most cases they were proposing less drivers potentially and also less days of pay. So, you know, when we look at the services we're being provided and we look at these employees, you know, we want to make sure we think about what the impact would be to them in-house as well as versus if we potentially went with a third party. So as we compare these to what our 17-18 original budget this year was $5.6 million. Again, as I mentioned, we are likely going to have to amend that budget before the end of the year in order to continue out operations with Dallas County Schools. So whether we go in-house or third party, we're looking at a minimum of a $2.2 million impact on the district. Now, in the in-house version, we are making an investment in buses, so we need to keep that in mind. Those aren't dollar-for-dollar comparisons in terms of the district benefit. So as you look at the third party, we don't have an investment there that we could potentially have a return on at a later date. That would just strictly be funds out the door, whereas with the in-house model, we would be starting to bring our fleet back up into our ownership. Yes. So when we really started looking at factors to consider, of course, we started off looking at costs, but we know those are not representative of like services. So we keep that in mind when we look at bringing it in-house or outsourcing. We lose control and flexibility to change our operations, and once we outsource, every change we make will potentially result in an additional invoice or bill. So we have to keep that in mind, that it becomes very much inflexible in terms of those two options. State funding potential, although we may not have access to the funding under the current system, transportation has been a topic of discussion that will likely take center stage as more districts get closer to the Chapter 41 level that would push them out of transportation funds. And so at a future date, if the funding formula changes, we may have access to those state funds that we otherwise won't have if we're outsourced. Fleet ownership is a big thought on this decision. Over time, if we don't make investments in our fleet and we leave that to the vendor to supply the buses, we get to a point where bringing it in-house would not be an option if the services become a level that we're not happy with. It would be much less likely that we could financially bring it in-house. Right now, with having potentially 132 buses shifted to us, ownership, and according to the law with no cost would be the opportunity we would need to bring it in-house. There's many unknown add-on costs as we speak to other districts who have outsourced. That was a caution on having to put a number on costs that you're not going to be able to be aware of. There's many indications of, any excessive repairs would not be covered, so defining excessive and being able to track what was included and what was not would, be something we'd have to monitor. And then, of course, our biggest thing is our drivers and our staff morale and the customer service that they provide. We feel like our drivers have never really lost touch with being a CFB team member, and, as you meet with the drivers and talk with them, they still talk about our students as, their kids, their babies, and you feel that as you talk and meet with these people, and that's what we want with the person that's having the first contact with our kids. If we were to not go in-house, they would basically lose their TRS eligibility. So many of the drivers express that, that just wouldn't be an option for them. If we were to go with a vendor, they would not go and work for that vendor because they've got to finish out their retirement. So they would likely be looking to go to another district as close as possible so that they could keep their retirement. The number of days paid, that's something we would have to evaluate. Right now, those drivers receive some paid holidays that we'd have to determine if that would be a part of our pay structure. It's definitely not a part of an outsourced structure. They don't pay for holidays, sick days, or any other days other than days worked. And then, of course, having employees that have ownership of the services is a big factor to us and what we wanted to think about as we looked at our options. So items for consideration and next steps. We feel like time is of the essence. We have other districts that are making decisions and beginning to start approaching staff and looking to get their staff on board. We would like for board direction this evening. We had an item on the agenda for the board to consider. We also have an item on the agenda to purchase 10 school buses. Those buses would be ready for service by 18-19 if we start that purchase process this evening. Again, we have the funds to make the bus purchase, but when we do that, we're then using up all the contingency that I had built into the budget for operations. So that is just what we want you to know, that by making this purchase, we're still likely going to have to do an amendment then to cover any contingent operating adjustment that we have to make. We have been meeting. Bringing it in-house does require a significant amount of resources in terms of our payroll, our personnel, our benefits, risk management, purchasing, and accounting department. We have been meeting with all of these folks and working on a potential transition plan and how that would look to bring approximately 186 staff on board. There are many policies and procedures that would have to be adopted that are specific to drivers. Everything from what happens when you, if you happen to get a citation, what happens, if you have an accident, drug testing policies that are specific to drivers and their licensing requirements. So there's many things we would have to work out to bring drivers on board. Our goal would be, if the board chooses to move forward this evening and give us direction, would be to begin hiring our support staff, because those would not have the same policies and procedures as specific as drivers and monitors would have. And then we would get our work focused on all of those policies and procedures, and then we would finalize the hiring process by April of 2018, so that all of the staff would know their employment status well before the end of the school year. The support staff, we would take those on as CFB employees this year as we work towards getting our drivers on board. There's more legal issues with bringing the drivers on board because the buses would not be ours, and getting insurance, and them being DCS employees, or our employees, but driving DCS buses, so that would take longer to work out. So that's why we feel like we would get them hired, but to begin in the 18-19 year versus our support staff that we want to hire and begin as soon as possible in 17-18. So that is the information we have this evening related to transportation services, and would open it up for questions at this point. Yes, sir.
In respect to the drivers, do they have to apply for the positions again? How does that work?
Yes, because there are certain legal requirements that we have to meet before we hire any employee, we would have to go through a hiring process with those staff so that we could get all that documentation in order. We've talked about different ways to expedite that process, and we've also asked DCS Human Resource Department what information they could share with us to expedite that process, and so they're working with their attorneys right now to find out maybe if there is any data share that we could incorporate to eliminate some of the time associated with the paperwork, but there would have to be a definite process to hire and apply and hire.
What's the estimated time for that process to get started?
Well, we would be starting immediately with support staff. So we actually have a director of transportation position posted. We would start with that position, and then we would look at dispatchers and our routing specialists, and then the support staff involved with those individuals, our mechanics, get all those on board. It's likely going to take us at least a month to get all of the policies worked out. So probably by February, we would be meeting with the staff and getting them all of their paperwork, have the checklist for them, with a completion date of April. No later than April would be our target.
Particularly with the bus drivers, because I received a few calls from Dallas County School bus drivers. So would you say estimated time for bus drivers, I guess, would be sometime in maybe March or?
we would move as quickly as possible, but we just have to get all of the processes worked out. So yes, I would say, like I said, we're targeting no later than April. But if we could get it done quicker than that, we would.
And one last thing, will they come over at the same pay, bus drivers?
So right now, we don't have information related to how DCS made their decisions on setting pay and if they kept an equitable system in place or not. All we have is a driver and a pay rate. We don't have years, we don't have anything else to make a determination if they had an equitable system. We would not want to reduce anybody's hourly rate, but if for whatever reason Dallas County Schools has created some inequities, we also wouldn't want to bring those inequities into the system. So we're going to have to look at those. But under the assumption that a 5-year driver is making less than a 10-year driver, then they would keep their same pay.
And will CFB have the MPV drivers, the McKinney-Vento?
We will have routes to provide the service. I don't know that we would have specific drivers. My understanding is those drivers do not have the CDL license and they drive a different bus. I'm not sure that those buses are, who's going to get those buses, and if we'll need those buses or if those will be part of regular routes. But we'll definitely have the routes to service the students. And then once we figure out the buses we have, then we'll match the drivers with the buses and the routes.
Gotcha. That is all that I have. Thank you.
Mr. Shackman?
Do the estimates that you've been showing us, does that also include increased liability for us, liability insurance? It seems like we're going to pick up a whole lot in that area.
We did receive an estimate from a carrier on the insurance. It's included.
And those are built in.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
This assumes same routes that we have right now, but would all the routes go through a review? I mean, costs, do we have some at risk?
No, if we have the same number of drivers and the same number of buses, we should be able to,
And that's what you're planning for?
Right. I think year one would not be a good time for us to try to really make some efficiency moves. But we would definitely want to evaluate and look into year two for potential efficiencies. But I think that would be, could cause some service issues if we try to do that at the same time that we're bringing them on board.
That's my concern. Okay.
Because we're going to be, loading the software and, everything's going to be in a situation that we probably want to leave everything as the same as it is right now, potentially, to keep from having any of those issues.
Okay, thanks.
Have we taken a look at any shared cost possibilities? For example, Irving's doing the same thing we're doing right now because they were DCS. We've got a bus barn, they don't. So are there some ways that we might be able to build some resource to us in that regard?
There's some smaller districts that have, had some conversations. I think we would want to get our house in order before we own a service center, so it would probably fall on our shoulders. We would be taking the load of that if we worked with another district. So that would be something we would want to look at several years down the road after we're making sure we're taking care of our kids first.
Any other questions, board members? All right, our next agenda item is number 13, consider all matters related to 2018-2019 transportation services. This is marked for action. Dr. Burns, I need to ask you if there are any other comments you or your staff would like to make before the board considers action.
Just one, because I think Ms. Tillman has done an excellent job of framing that for you and really giving you all of the information, and the board members have asked some excellent questions to help us move forward. But I do make a comment, and that is our recommendation to bring it in-house. That is our administrative recommendation, is to take the DCS bus drivers and bring them in-house and make them CFB employees. So I want to make clear that that is our recommendation.
All right, board members, is there a motion to be made regarding transportation services for 2018-2019? Ms. Klein,
A motion authorizing staff to pursue in-house transportation services.
I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second that.
I have a second from Mr. Fleming. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. Next agenda item is number 14, consider purchase of buses. Dr. Burns, do you have any comments to be made about this?
Well, I think Ms. Tillman kind of laid that out, that the next step that we need to get going and started is to buy some buses. So, Ms. Tillman, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that we do have available resources within what we budgeted for transportation. We had set aside contingency funds for a combination of operations and buses. Because we have 10 buses currently that we feel like need to be taken out of the daily rotation, we want to go ahead and dedicate all of that contingency to get this order moving. But we want to make sure you're fully aware by using all of the contingency on these buses that there is going to be a budget amendment likely to cover operations as we move forward with Dallas County Schools. So I want you to be fully aware of that, but we think it's critical that buses take a while, so it could be 6 months. So that's why we're starting now, so that we get those in place and we can get those 10 out of service for next year.
Okay. Board members, this is I'm sorry, Ms. Klein.
The buses say on the side.
Whatever Angela Shelley Brown would like to put on those buses.
Well, it looks like that.
It will say CFB. The word county will not be in there.
Okay, just checking.
Board members, is there a motion to be made regarding purchase of buses? Ms. Valenzuela.
I would like to make a motion to consider purchase of the buses.
I have a motion from Ms. Valenzuela. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Robotchik. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. Dr. Burns. Board members, next agenda item was considering all matters related to the election of members to the board of directors for the Dallas Central Appraisal District. This is an action item.
Yes, President Matthews, Ms. Tillman can give you a little bit more context with that if you'd like. The one you're about to consider after that has a little bit more, more moving parts, but she can explain what that means.
So every 2 years, we're given the opportunity to vote on a recommendation for a board member for the appraisal district. The City of Dallas, DISD, the Commissioners Court, they all get to appoint one member, then the cities have to elect and the school boards have to elect. We're given the opportunity to nominate. We did not nominate a candidate this year. However, one was nominated, and in order for that person to serve on the board, he still has to receive a majority of the votes from the school districts in order to represent the school districts. The gentleman on the list was also elected in 2015 by the school districts, and CFB did give him our vote at that time. So we're asking the board to consider authorizing the vote on behalf of what's been submitted.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Klein.
I would recommend that one poor individual that wanted, I'm joking, to be
You may not be poor.
election of that one name, member to the board of directors for the Dallas Central Appraisal District.
I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Ramos. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Dr. Burns, board members, Is there a motion to be made regarding the Board of Directors for Denton Central Appraisal District?
President Matthews, members of the board, this one's a little bit more complicated because it's got several votes that can be spread out. So I'd like for Ms. Tillman to give you a little bit overview and then, of course, the board's direction.
So with Denton, it works a little bit differently. All 5 members are elected. So each jurisdiction is given the opportunity to nominate up to 5 candidates. So that's why you see a much longer list. We did not make a nomination for Denton County. However, we still have 144 votes that can be split any way you choose among the candidates. You can vote all for one candidate or split them however you choose. So at this point, it's up to you all to decide how you would like to utilize those votes or not utilize them at all.
Board members, I would like to bring your attention to Mr. Roy Atwood. He is one of the 5 candidates. He lives here in Carrollton. His kids go to Carrollton schools. He's very active in the community. I believe he attends church here in Carrollton as well. He is a state and local tax attorney. And I hear a lot of good things about him. I've talked to several folks, and he's gotten high remarks in that regard. So I would recommend that we give all our votes to Mr. Roy Atwood.
Ms. Klein?
I've also worked with Roy Atwood in the past and have very positive impressions and feel like he would represent us since he's from our area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So then, Mr. Fleming, would you like to make the motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve Roy Atwood, all 5 votes for the Denton.
144.
I mean, excuse me, 144. I'm sorry about that. 5 votes, yeah.
5 candidates.
5 candidates, right. Consider all matters related to the election of board directors for Mr. Roy Atwood for Denton Central Appraisal District. All 141 votes. 44.
Have a
Thank you.
motion from Mr. Fleming. Do I have a second?
It's getting late.
Have a second from Mr. Ramos. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, please. That vote is unanimous. Moving on. Next, we're considering all matters incident and related to the issuance and sale of Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2017, including the adoption of an order authorizing the issuance of such bonds, establishing parameters for the sale and issuance of such bonds, and delegating certain matters to authorized officials of the district. This is an action item, Dr. Burns.
Yes. President Matthews, members of the board, we do feel like we have an opportunity that's in the best interest of the district regarding this. I'll let Ms. Tillman give you the details.
So as we've been monitoring the market, rates have started nearing an all-time low for 2017, so we started evaluating our refunding opportunities. What we are considering is a current refunding of our Series 2008 bonds and an advance refunding of a portion of our 2012 bonds. Our typical approach is to have the board approve a parameter bond order that delegates the pricing authority to selected pricing officers only if certain parameters are met. The parameters are listed in the executive summary and also included in the bond order on page 3. This method gives the district the ability to price when it's most advantageous to the district based upon market conditions, and the pricing officer can only authorize the sale if all parameters are met. It turns out this is a little bit of a unique transaction because the most advantageous time to price was today, and we had initiated pricing this morning. Something unique happening right now is the Tax Reform Act includes language right now in both versions of the bill that would eliminate the ability for school districts or any municipality to do advance refundings effective January 1. So as we started working on this refunding, we put it in fast gear because we decided it would be in our best interest to get this done by December 31. However, everybody else started working towards that goal too. So it was looking like the market was going to be saturated over the next 2 weeks. So we put it even higher gear, and we got everything done to actually have pricing today. So although this is a parameter bond order, we actually know the results if the board chooses to authorize the parameter bond order as presented this evening. It's only contingent upon board approval. The pricing is being held right now for us on the market, and we would finalize the transaction in the morning. So in front of you, each of you have a savings sheet from Hilltop that I put in front of you. If you'll take a look at that, normally right now we would just have estimates, but these are all actual numbers. So the debt service we're looking at refunding, if you look in the second column, is $19.6 million. With this refunding, we would be looking at $16.3 million. So you can see our debt would go from 19.6 to 16.3, which is a $3.2 million savings to our taxpayers. You can see we have accelerated some debt here, so we've taken 4 years off and we've pushed that up and made a shorter maturity. We're doing this, but we're still keeping our tax rate at or below our current levels. This also helped improve our savings. I want to back up a little bit because I'm not sure I explained on the refunding. The difference between a current and an advanced refunding, we'll still be able to continue to do current refundings, but advanced refundings are when you're refunding the bonds when there's more than a 90-day window from the call date. So if your call date is not within the next 90 days, it's considered an advanced refunding. That's the piece that they're looking to eliminate. The biggest portion of this savings is coming from an advanced refunding, so this would be the last opportunity to utilize that mechanism if it goes through. With that, again, the $3.2 million savings would be spread out over the life of our bonds from now until 2033, and we would recommend that the board consider authorizing the parameter bond order as presented. One final note, I'm sorry. I also gave you a handout. We like to keep track of our refundings. We started with 2010, and you can see going forward, including this refunding, would bring our gross savings over these 8 refundings to $40 million for our taxpayers.
That's good. I am, Ms. Klein, ready for a motion regarding this item, if you would be.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the issuance and sale. Is there specific language, Ms. Tillman?
Approve the parameter bond order.
Approve the parameter bond order. Is that all?
For sale.
For sale and issuance.
For sale and issuance of Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds Series 2017, including the adoption of an order authorizing the issuance of such bonds, establishing parameters for the sale and issuance of such bonds, and delegating certain matters to authorized officials in the district, which
Okay.
they seem to have already done.
Well, yeah. I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Valenzuela. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. That vote is unanimous. Thank you. All righty. The next agenda item, ladies and gentlemen, is item number 18. Closed meeting is authorized under Texas Government Code, including but not limited to Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, real property, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, security devices, 551.082, school children / district employees / disciplinary matter or complaint, 551.0821, personally identifiable student information, 551.084, investigation. The board will meet in closed meeting to deliberate the following items: the evaluation of the superintendent and the superintendent's contract. You are welcome to stay here and hang out, or if you need to leave, feel free to do so. We will reconvene the board in the boardroom. If you need a 5-minute in the conference room. If you need a 5-minute break, members, please feel free to take that. We are adjourned at 10. This board meeting at 12:07 a.m. on December the 8th, 2017. Board members, our next agenda item is number 19, completion of the superintendent evaluation and is marked for action. Is there a motion? Mr. Shackman.
I would move that the minutes of this meeting reflect that the 2016-2017 school year evaluation for our superintendent is completed.
I have a motion from Mr. Shackman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, Ms. Valenzuela. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, raise your hand if you're in favor of that motion. Thank you. That vote is unanimous. Our next agenda item is number 20, consideration and possible action regarding superintendent's contract of employment and is marked for action. Board members, do we have a motion at this time for that? Ms. Klein.
Make a motion that we take action regarding the superintendent's contract of employment to extend the contract by 1 year and give a 3% raise.
I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Rabachi. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. We have 6 votes for, 1 vote against.
You need to take that vote. You need to then ask for those against. You don't assume.
Huh? I do what?
It could be an abstention. We don't, until you ask for all those opposed, raise your hand.
All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, I stand corrected. We have 6 votes for, 1 abstention. Let's see what our next agenda item is here, folks. We'll move to agenda item number 21, comments from board members regarding posted agenda items. Board members, do you have any comments or regarding anything we've done tonight?
I really enjoyed the presentation on the dual language program.
Yeah, that was good.
And I'm excited that we're going to start offering at Dan F. Long. Hopefully we can get it implemented in the other schools as well, too.
Yeah, it's a great program.
Is there any projection on how many kids may take that up at Dan F. Long? Is there, or they're coming from an elementary school? That's right, that's right.
They'll be coming from Thompson, so our 5th grade continuers, and then at Field, we would do the same model at Thompson. We've also opened it up for students from other campuses that have been in one-way dual language programs that wish to continue. And then we've also had new immigrant students that have participated in some of the dual language classes as well. So we hope to continue building the enrollment there.
So Dan F. Long may be possibly increasing enrollment in the future, maybe.
That would be our intent.
Yeah, right.
It worked for J.D. Stark.
Yeah, that's the reason why I said that.
Just out of curiosity, Furneaux doesn't have it, does it?
They don't have the 2-way dual.
Okay, I thought that maybe that might help over there too as well. I noticed that with Davis Elementary and Furneaux, they're so close in proximity. One of those reports that we were looking at, it seemed like Davis is at 93% and Furneaux is down at 53%, and they're so close to each other, but the use of the facilities, it's vastly different, the occupancy.
And part of the occupancy at Furneaux too is related to the special programs that we have there. So we have some classroom spaces that we need large spaces for special programming for a small number of students, and that also contributes to some of.
One last thing I want to say on mine, thank you, Tanya. You've been hit with a lot of stuff with the school buses, with the TIF, and I know you're working hard. Thank you.
We call you the new queen of busing.
How do you spell buses?
And we all feel the same way as G does. Any other comments, board members?
I want to keep going till 12, at least 12:10.
What is in your lap?
Hearing none and seeing none, we have reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 12:12. This board meeting at 12:07 a.m. on December the 8th, 2017. Board members, our next agenda item is number 19, completion of the superintendent evaluation and is marked for action. Is there a motion? Mr. Shackman.
I would move that the minutes of this meeting reflect that the 2016-2017 school year evaluation for our superintendent is completed.
I have a motion from Mr. Shackman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, Ms. Valenzuela. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, raise your hand if you're in favor of that motion. Thank you. That vote is unanimous. Our next agenda item is number 20, consideration and possible action regarding superintendent's contract of employment and is marked for action. Board members, do we have a motion at this time for that? Ms. Klein.
Make a motion that we take action regarding the superintendent's contract of employment to extend the contract by 1 year and give a 3% raise.
I have a motion from Ms. Klein. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Rabachi. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. We have 6 votes for, 1 vote against.
You need to take that vote. You need to then ask for those against. You don't assume.
Huh? I do what?
It could be an abstention. We don't, until you ask for all those opposed, raise your hand.
All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, I stand corrected. We have 6 votes for, 1 abstention. Let's see what our next agenda item is here, folks. We'll move to agenda item number 21, comments from board members regarding posted agenda items. Board members, do you have any comments or regarding anything we've done tonight?
I really enjoyed the presentation on the dual language program.
Yeah, that was good.
And I'm excited that we're going to start offering at Dan F. Long. Hopefully we can get it implemented in the other schools as well, too.
That's a great program.
Is there any projection on how many kids may take that up at Dan F. Long? Is there any? Or they're coming from an elementary school? That's right, that's right.
They'll be coming from Thompson, so our 5th grade continuers, and then at Field, we would do the same model at Thompson. We've also opened it up for students from other campuses that have been in one-way dual language programs that wish to continue. And then we've also had new immigrant students that have participated in some of the dual language classes as well. So we hope to continue building the enrollment there.
So Dan F. Long may be possibly increasing enrollment in the future, maybe.
That would be our intent.
Yeah, right.
It worked for Janie Stark.
Yeah, that's the reason why I said that.
Just out of curiosity, Fresno doesn't have it, does it?
They don't have the two-way dual.
Okay, I thought that maybe that might help over there too as well. I noticed that with Davis Elementary and Fresno, they're so close in proximity. One of those reports that we were looking at, it seemed like Davis is at 93% and Fresno is down at 53%, and they're so close to each other, but the use of the facilities, it's vastly different, the occupancy.
And part of the occupancy at Fresno too is related to the special programs that we have there. So we have some classroom spaces that we need large spaces for special programming for a small number of students, and that also contributes to some of it.
One last thing I want to say on mine, thank you, Tanya. You've been hit with a lot of stuff with the school buses, with the TIF, and I know you're working hard. Thank you.
We call you the new queen of busing.
How do you spell buses?
And we all feel the same way as G does. Any other comments, board members?
I want to keep going till 12, at least 12:10.
What is in your laugh?
Hearing none and seeing none, we have reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 12:12.